Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. We have a lot of information today. Let me tell you, my name is Tony Ragunanan. I'm a personal and professional development trainer. And I work with both local and international companies. I have worked with the police and several distributors, different sort of companies. And when we started talking about this, when Rhea and I first started talking about this, we realized there was a big overlap in terms of what she did and what I did. Even though I didn't do parenting, a lot of corporate training involves leadership. This is what parenting is. So we realized that the overlap lies in the area of emotional intelligence. So we started to do some surveys. And what we found in schools was that there was a common thread. And that common thread lies in emotion, it lies in self-esteem, it lies in social media and gaming, and it lies with peers. And this is where all of the problems, or most of them, seem to come up. Now, I imagine there are other things that will come up through your questioning, and we will deal with those as fast as we could. So, with this session, we really want to help you to increase your mental and verbal agility in dealing with your kids as well as yourselves, and in dealing with anybody else who you have to deal with in terms of communication. I am not the perfect parent, but I am a conscious parent. I care about what I need to do for my children to thrive. So to help me today is Rhea Lalla. She's a global speaker. She's a coach, she's a conscious parenting expert who will give you a lot of information. Rhea is going to focus on a lot of the how-tos. How do you do this? How do you do that? And I will support her with the information. She has a lot of experience. She has coached people from all over the world. She has gotten great results. And when you leave here today, you are going to leave with tools that you could use right away. So without further ado, I want to introduce Rhea Lalla.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everyone. So I want to tell you about a remarkable study. It's the longest running study that they say has been done, and it was done by Harvard University back in the late 1930s. And that study took 724 men, and they asked them, what do you think makes you happy? So what do you think, out of these 724 men, what do you think they said would make them happy? Throw something out at me, folks. Money. You heard money? Yes, and that's right. 80% of these men said money would make me happy. Another 50% said fame. So they wanted to actually test this out and see, well, what actually makes for happiness? So they could do the simple thing, like just send out a survey every year. This was a 75-year study, and it's still ongoing. What they did is, they went way past just doing a survey. They decided to do a deep dive into these men's lives. What did they do? They did MRIs of their brain. They interviewed them, they surveyed them, they interviewed their wives, they interviewed their children, they interviewed their co-workers at work. They put secret cameras so everybody could take a peek in and see what they were doing, how they were behaving, what their conversations were like. They did blood tests to check their physiology, to find out how are they thriving, are they healthy, what were they like year to year. And the results came in. Thousands of pages of results came in. And this is what came out of it. What they found was that good relationships make us happy. Social connections are good for us. Our friends, our family, our community. That was what was going to determine whether people had Alzheimer's, were more prone to disease, heart disease, brain disease, body degenerative diseases. They found that those, maybe they bickered a little bit with their wives, but those people that still leaned into the relationship, leaned in, tried to build the connection with their kids, these were the people who ultimately felt and assessed themselves as feeling happy. It didn't matter. Oh, I left out a really important part of the study. They took men, these 724 men, half of them were from Harvard University. They were Harvard University graduates. The other half was from the lowest socioeconomic level in Boston at the time. So here we had two groups of men, each from completely different areas of life. One that probably had an immense amount of privilege, and one that almost had nothing. And yet, time and time again, when they looked at the results, these truths still held. So what does that tell us? Well, first of all, it tells us that fame and money doesn't make us happy. So, some of you in the audience are thinking, well, I already knew that. Like, I know that family's important and friends are important. But what do we do with that information? Like, that wisdom is as old as the ages. But why is it that it's so hard to live that? And let's face it, relationships are messy. They're complicated. They're full of drama. They're ego. Somebody says something to you, you don't like it, you hold it in your heart, and it causes a little paper cut. We have interactions with our kids, millions and one interactions with our children, and some of them unknowns to us. We've left little paper cuts on their heart, and we don't know what are the tools that we can use, that we can create really rich, dreamy connections with others, that we can forgive and move past whatever it is. So today's session is really about what is the secret sauce for you to create those dreamy connections. How can you lean into the relationship? What tools do you need to create that interaction so that you don't have issues later on in the future? Body issues, mind issues, health issues, happiness issues. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. But before we go into it, I want to tell you about, let's just sort of set expectations for what's going to be happening today. And I want to tell you a little bit about my favorite t-shirt. So this is true. This is not the t-shirt, but I do have a t-shirt that says, "Don't believe everything you think." I love this t-shirt. It's all tattered, otherwise I would have worn it today, because it was like the perfect t-shirt for me. What this t-shirt reminds me of is that who I am is a sum total of all my biases, my blind spots, and my beliefs. I am a sum total of all my whatever mommy and daddy issues. My mom and dad are in the audience. Whatever somebody told me when I was 12 years old on the schoolyard that I made meaning of or created a story about. That's what we are as humans. We like to create meaning. We're storytellers. And we tend to believe the stories that we tell, and some of them serve us, and some of them don't. There are filters by which Rhea Lalla sees the world. They're called the Rhea Lalla filters, and they're the sum total of everything that I've ever done in my whole life. But my filter is different from your filter, and different from your filter. So then, if all of us are wearing different filters on how we see the world, then what is it that allows us to get past our filters, get past our ego, so that we can understand each other and create connections and understand that each one of us sees the world in a different way and basically begin to climb into somebody else's world, because that's what it takes. To really forge magical connections with people, we need to be able to have the ability to climb in and to create deep empathy and understanding, and from that place is where we can gain somebody else's listening. And when somebody feels that, they will follow you anywhere. They will be like this. You know that because you may have those relationships already in your life. So what I ask of you as we go through this seminar today is to keep an open mind. Some of the things that we're going to say today are going to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And that's a good thing. Because if you're uncomfortable, it means that you're stretching yourself. It means that you're moving past your world that you live in and trying to see something that's a little bit on the periphery. And that's how you grow. So when you hear something that sort of like rubs against everything that my mother told me, or everything that I've been doing for a long time, I ask you to just lean back, stay open, don't believe everything you think, understand that we have our own view in the world, but today we're here together, all as conscious people, gathered, getting up early, organizing babysitting, just so we can be here to try and stretch ourselves. So let's do this together. Yes? Excited? Alrighty. Conscious parenting. I am a conscious parenting coach. I talk about conscious parenting all over the world. Does that mean that I'm a perfect parent, as Tony mentioned? No, I'm not a perfect parent. Conscious parenting is not about being the perfect parent or having perfect kids. My kids who are in the audience will attest to that. What it means, though, is that every single day, I know that I have to roll up my sleeves and get to work. I know that every single day, it's like I see a mountain in front of me, but I want to bring my awareness to every interaction that I have with my children, such that I can leave it exquisitely wrapped with a bow. Can I do that all the time? Am I always that present? No, because I'm human, right? We're all human. But here's what I can do. If I use a tone, because my kids are very susceptible to tone, and they're very quick to tell me, you're the conscious parent, you're using a tone with me, that I can use my tools to heal it. I can use the tools that I have, the ones that we're going to share with you today, so that we can create a really rich dynamic between each other. So there's no all the paper cuts that might be left unknowns to me in their unconscious. It doesn't have room to grow and create gangrene and create meaning. And then they grow up and we become adults and we wonder why mommy and daddy never said this to us or never did this for us. We live in a world that is constantly evolving and adapting and changing. We as parents, this is different. This is a whole different paradigm shift. This is no longer a top-down hierarchical parenting. Yes, that worked in the past, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how self-expressed we are in owning what we want in our life and speaking up. Do we feel like we're thriving? Now, conscious parenting today you're going to be getting cutting-edge stuff. What the latest in neuroscience is saying on parenting. And really, conscious parenting is about evolving alongside your children. That raising the child now has become more about raising the parental self than it is about just raising the child. How's that for a switch? That now I get to use my children as an opportunity to find all of the areas that I need to grow and use it as a trampoline to become my best self. My highest self. That's what parenting is. That we're growing alongside of our children. We have lots of people from schools today, educators, parents, people that are just curious. Some of them don't have children. But this is our opportunity for all of us to evolve as we go through this session. Okay, parenting. So what makes for parenting? A lot of times people will say love. Well, I just need to love my kids. What's wrong with that? Love is good. Love and good intentions. Okay, so a lot of us were raised maybe with love and good intentions. And we came out all right. We're not on the top of schools, hurting anybody. Here's the thing, I want you to just work with me for a sec here. I could be with my young daughter who loves looking at the most minute things that are out there in the world. She is somebody who takes her time. And I could hold her hand as we're about to go walk down the street because I have a mission, I need to get to the store. I could hold her hand and be touching her. I could lean over to her and say, I love you, and walk down the street. But as I walk down, she wants to stop and look at all the bugs that are on the leaves. She wants to look at that distorted twig that's on the ground, like all the minutia. And as I try and pull her, and as I'm in my zone trying to get to that store, in that moment, that child is not feeling as if I've attuned to her. She's not feeling like I've connected to her. Even though I've said I love her. Even though I've held her hand. Even though my arm is around her. Because in that moment, she wants something else. What she wants is my presence. What she wants is for me to stop with her and look at the bugs in the garden and dig up among the dirt and the soil and see what magic lies there. You see, me just saying the words I love you and doing the hugs and the kisses, it goes far beyond that. This is the conversation that is always happening under the conversation. And how well I can read that conversation, tune in to all those little bits and pieces, is going to be a function of how well my child feels close and attended to by me. Are you with me? So, what does allow for happy, thriving kids? The cues. That's the conversation under the conversation. That's the difference between seeing my cute little baby on the ground playing, and all of a sudden I think, oh, it's so cute! And I just run up to him, and I pick him up, and I kiss him, but meanwhile, he was really busy putting square pegs in square holes. Or he was just busy just making all these fantastic neural connections in his brain, but I punctured it with my own want, my own ego, my own need to hug and kiss. So in that moment, did I attune to my child? Did I read the cues and get out of the world of me and into the world of them or the world of we? No. Just like when I was walking down the street holding my daughter's hand, telling her that I love her, was I in the world, her world? No. So, think of it like a radio that you're trying to constantly tweak. If you go a little bit to this side, it's going to be fuzzy. A little bit to this side, it's going to be fuzzy as well. But then you find the station. And then the music plays. And you know, all of you parents in here, you know when you've been in that state. Because that's when you feel like time just passes. I'm not playing Monopoly just to do a check mark in the box for good mom. I'm in a state of flow. I'm in a lean back. Everyone here has tasted that. But if you want to taste that again and again and again and have more of those moments, then that's going to be a function of how well we can tune in. This is reading the cues. Also, and we're going to be talking about this later, our perspectives, just how much we can climb into our children's world, how much we can listen to our intuition. Our intuition, the way I view it, is like the universe channeling knowledge into me. I'll tell you, indigenous societies in Papua New Guinea, the woman in Uganda, they're not reading what to expect when you're expecting. They come from a deep knowing, transferred from the ages of how to handle their children. Does that make them any better or worse than us? No. We're living in a different time, different abundance, different opportunities that arise for us. But how well I can tap into my intuition, which is a really amazing skill set, that helps us read into the needs of our children. And our ego. We're going to talk a bit about ego. But if we get rid of ego, subtract ego, you're going to be set up for your best chance of success. So that, my friends, is what allows for parental transformation and happy, thriving kids. And make no mistake, it's work. It is work. It is every day getting up and going, okay, my head kind of hurts, and I'm tired, I didn't sleep too well, and I'm hungry, and something needs to be done for the kids. And then I say, who do I want to be in this moment, and what do I want to create? And I step into the work. But guess what's waiting for me on the other side? Something really magical. It's the place where your children want to tell you everything about their lives, when they want to tell you about your dreams, where they tell you about all the pains and hurts, what somebody said in the schoolyard, and they want to weep in your arms, and they're fearless. That's what's waiting for you. It is in that work that I do, everybody in the world wins. Why? Because I'm turning into my best self. If I wasn't patient before, I'm using my children to learn my patience. So who's going to win? My husband's going to win. The lady down the street, the lady behind the counter. Everybody wins, including me and my relationship with my children. Who wants to take on that challenge of work? It's work, but look what's waiting for you on the other side of that rainbow. It's exquisite. So what's the cost? What's the cost of not doing what I'm talking about? There's huge costs. Things like addictions. People want to know, where do eating disorders sometimes come from? Identity disorders, depression. People that allow for or commit emotional abuse, drug abuse, People that have anger issues, low self-esteem, little empathy, can't soothe themselves, can't soothe their children or can't soothe themselves. So this is an opportunity now for areas in our life, and by the way, no one in here is perfect, including me, an area in our life that we can look, reflect, introspect, and see how can we begin to transform these things, because it's never too late. We know that the brain is plastic, we know that it's malleable, and that all we need is to hear a yes, I'm up for that. I want to just share with you really quickly, so I'm sure all of you about 17 years ago, the Columbine shooting, everyone remember the Columbine shooting? Yeah. Tragic, worst, how would they call that, terrorist attack on the US in a school, done by one of the kids that were in a school. I just want to read this to you. Some of you have already read it in your book. This is the mother of Dylan, who was one of the shooters at Columbine. And this is what she said. I wish I had listened to him more carefully in the years preceding the shooting. I wonder what questions he would have asked that might have encouraged my son. What questions I could have asked that would have encouraged my son to open up about whatever he was feeling. I wish that I had the ability to delve deeper and ask the kinds of questions that would have encouraged him to open up more to me. I had parented my kids in many ways the way I had been parented, which means you listen to your kids' problems and you try to fix them. I think what I needed to do with Dylan was to just shut up and listen, to try and get him to say to me what he was feeling and thinking about something, rather than to automatically jump to a way to make him not feel that way, or to try and fix the way he felt. You may be thinking in the audience, well, that's not my kid. My kid's definitely not going to be in a school shooting up people. And you're probably right. Because already, if you're here, it means you're already operating with a level of consciousness and hunger to be the best you. But here's the thing. Let's go way down. Forget, if that's to the 10th power, let's go down to the 0.1 power. I don't want any part of my children to feel unheard, unexpressed, unloved, misunderstood. I don't want anything to lurk in the dark. So this session today is going to be, how do you pluck out, how do you expose some light in all those dark places? Put some light in it, and here's the funny thing. Once you put some light on it, the dark disappears. We'll talk more about that later. We have a window of opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. Before I pass the mic over to Tony, never again in your child's life will the neural connections that are being made ever be repeated. Yes, we can change. I've got all kinds of things I'm working on. But what do I want to do? Do I want to wait till my children are adults, where they have all these barnacles that I've put on them, and now they're moving through the world and now I have to do work? I want to give my children the least amount of work possible. So how do I do that? I try and make sure that everything that I can do now in this magical moment, this moment that's ripe with opportunity, that I seize it. I seize it, this window of opportunity. And so, to talk to you more about what's happening in your child's emotional realm, I'm going to pass it over to Tony.
Thank you, Rhea. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. All right. Okay, I just want to spend some time talking about emotions. And I want, during this session, to just share 3 personal stories. Things that happened to me years ago. When I was about 15 years old, I was in high school, and my geography teacher at the time told me to give a vote of thanks to a speaker we had come in today. Now, let me just give you some background. I grew up as a very shy individual. I was what you would call a very amiable personality. But this, for a teacher to ask you to do a vote of thanks, the quietest boy in the class, well, you know what creeping poison is? You know when I have to sit there for an hour to wait until the speaker finishes, knowing that I have to get up in front of this class? You know how hard that is? Have you ever felt that? You sitting down on this side and your teacher starts from this side, was 5 by 2, and you know your turn coming, but your heart just beating. You know how that feels? Could I control that? Well, over the years I learned to control it. But that is an emotion. This is what it looked like. Would it be nice to control that? So, what is emotion? Well, I have 2 dictionary definitions here. A natural instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. You know, all of us have difficult people in our lives. Difficult, and I put that in inverted commas because there's no such thing as difficult. There's just inflexible communicators. It took me a while to buy into that idea. Something that causes a reaction. Well, in this case, it causes a reaction. So it controls, your emotions control your thinking, your behavior, and your actions. And there are physiological changes that go along with that. Your heart beats faster, you breathe heavier, all kinds of other things, you start sweating. Well, in order to control that, what we are actually talking about is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is, there are a lot of different thinking on the subject, but it is really controlling yourself, controlling your emotions, and that of others in terms of social awareness and relationship management. But how is it different from IQ? You know, IQ is an intelligence test. It is what our schools measure. Have any of you learned about emotional intelligence in school? They don't teach that today. That is one of the reasons why we have a lot of the problems that we have. Because children don't know how to control themselves. It is a problem that is not only isolated to Trinidad, but it's all over the world. It happens everywhere. So, what I needed in this case was a bit of emotional intelligence. But, so emotional intelligence is really an ability to understand the needs and feelings of oneself and other people. Manage one's own feelings. When Rhea was talking about her daughter, she had to get into her world. That is what we have to do. But through that, doesn't matter what kind of reaction that is coming at you, the person we have to regulate is us. They need us, to be there. That is what I am going to get into in a little while. And then we have to respond in an appropriate way. Now, this is not a scientific course by any means, but I just want to get scientific maybe for just 5 minutes. And I'm going to be very basic with this. This is something called the triune model of the brain. When our brain first starts developing, we develop a reptilian complex. This is the part of your brain that is responsible for fight or flight response. If somebody bad drives you on the road, you just react. You don't think about it. You don't think about what you're doing. This is something that happens to all of us. The limbic region is responsible for emotion. And the neocortex is responsible for logic and reasoning, something that we're supposed to have. Some people have it more than others. Now what happens? What happens is, when we go into an emotional hijack, what is an emotional hijack? Is when we lose control. Have you ever dealt with somebody who lost control? Well, we all have children, so yes. We have dealt with somebody who lost control. I lost control one day. I was playing Monopoly. I was 12 years old. And I landed on Boardwalk, and the person who I was playing against had 2 hotels on it. You know how much money I had to pay out? You know what happened to the board? I went flying. Board gone. Game done. No more Monopoly. Control yourself, Tony. But I didn't. I didn't know how to. Game was over. So when our children don't listen to us, when they misbehave, we go into our own emotional hijack. And what happens? What happens is that limbic region overtakes the neocortex. It overtakes it temporarily. And this is seen on MRI scans where the limbic region will light up. And the neocortex actually shrinks. So it is something, in that moment, we cannot think straight. We can't think straight. And we have all had those situations where you have said to yourself, I wasn't thinking straight. Have you ever gotten an angry email from somebody, and all of a sudden, you want to write them back in all caps and red? That is what happens in an emotional hijack. But you know when that happens? Go for a walk, have a coffee, a tea, or water, if you don't drink coffee and tea. it's important that we take that time for our neocortex to come back to normal. You know, there's this story about Oscar Pistorius the other day. He's the Blade Runner, the one who killed his girlfriend through the bathroom door because she was on the phone 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's a normal thing to do. So he shot her. And he's vomiting and crying in the courtroom afterwards. Why? Because now he's sorry. His brain has gone back to normal. But this is what happens. We have to give ourselves the time. Who it is has to regulate their emotion? Parents. Children are not skilled yet. But we have to show them how to do that. Remember that they copy us. Rhea will expand on that later on today as well. But what is an emotion? It comes in waves. It comes in a wave, and you have to get off at some point. The more you learn to control it, better for you. The more you learn to control it, the better for your children. But we have to get off. You could decide where that point is. Why do we have to control it? Because our nervous system is connected. Is connected to our children's. What do I mean? We have to be aware of what we pass on to our kids. When you are stressed, your child is stressed. Our children sense everything that you feel. Even those things you are trying to hide that you feel. You will be driving down the road and your child will be in the car seat in the back, and any little thing you react to, they are seeing. They are seeing that. It is important for us to learn how to manage that. If I am angry, afraid, my child will feel it too. They read all of our micro and macro expressions. They are looking for cues from us. They copy us through their mirror neurons. If a baby looks at you and you smile at the baby tends to smile back. If you wave to somebody, even if it's a total stranger, you will wave. You don't know who you're waving to, but you're waving because we want friends. It is nature. We like attachment. We love attachment. But what is that? Our children form their emotional landscape through us. It depends on how strong we are. That is how strong they will be. But emotions are contagious. And the reason I have this drawing here is because my daughter drew this when she was 4. She said, and she gave it to me, she said, "Daddy, this is you when you get upset." At first I looked at it and I said, Well, everybody was laughing, but then everybody stopped. I looked at this picture and I said, wow, that is something I need to think about. But when we had our second child, my son is now 3, I noticed that exactly the way I was talking to my daughter is exactly the way she was talking to her younger brother. Where did she get that from? I don't know. So this is something I had to be conscious about. It's very important that I was conscious about it, and these are the things I try to change. My son now cannot handle people raising their voice at him. He cannot handle it. So why are you talking like that? So you see, everything is connected. Our nervous system is connected. Why do you need to be aware? Why do we need to be aware of this? Because our values, the values in our children are being formed during that imprint period. We call it an imprint period because children that age are like sponges. They grab onto everything. They soak up everything. Everything you do, everything you say, they are soaking it up. So it's called an imprint period because of that. Why? What is important, during this period is attachment. Love is not attachment. Attachment is the way we develop that trust with our children. There are many ways to attach, and I'll get into that. But there must be some trust. What is the definition here? Well, is the pursuit and preservation of proximity, closeness, connection. Connection is one thing we have to think about, but not only on a physical level. Behaviorally, emotionally, and psychologically. We have to connect with our children. Bullies, spoiled brats, their parents love them. But sometimes what creates a bully is the lack of attachment or the loss of attachment. And when we talk about peers, both Rhea and I will expand on that. But there are 6 ways to attach. The first way is through senses. Smell, sight, sound, and touch. Chances are your child's favorite uncle is the one who spends the most time with them. This one may be kind of obvious, but sameness. The second way to attach. This child seeks to be like the one who they feel close to. They walk, they talk the same way, their gestures are the same way. But it's also dependent on who's the dominant personality. You know, the other day, my daughter was on the other side of the bed and she asked me for a book. And just casually, I took the book and I threw it. I just said, here. And then right away, I closed my eyes and I said, God, this is the thing I'm quarreling with her about. Because sometimes I will ask her thing, here. Where is she getting it from? I don't know. You know, in talking about this sameness, there's a girl from the Ukraine, Oksana Malaya. She had alcoholic parents, and her parents used to leave her outside with the dogs for extended periods of time. In fact, to spend the night with the dogs, the authorities found her when she was 7 years old. And she used to, at that age, still walk on all fours. And her senses of smell, sight, hearing, everything were elevated compared to other adults. So this is, even though this is a drastic story, it does something to send a message as to how children copy us. The third way to attach, belonging and loyalty. Have you ever noticed your child when you reach the school? That is my mommy. That is my daddy. You don't have to know what attachment is to benefit from it. Many good parents out there who can't give you a definition of what attachment is. You don't have to know exactly what it is, but children benefit from it because parents just naturally do it. At times. But life has gotten busy for many of us. Work is harder. We spend more times away from home. All of these things affect those around us. They affect the children, our children. The fourth way to attach is significance. They want to feel that they matter. They want to feel that they matter. This is one of them that sticks out in my mind all the time. You know, Roberto Cialdini wrote a book called The Laws of Influence, and there's one of those laws called consistency. What is consistency? If you tell a child that you did a great job cleaning up that room yesterday, they will be consistent with that behavior as long as they get the recognition for that. But that validation that we need, we never grow out of it. Never. They need to know that you are there to support them. The fifth way to attach is feeling. A child feeling emotional intimacy to their parent could tolerate much more physical separation and still hold the parent close. This is also a very important one. And the sixth way to attach is being known. You know me. Like Rhea was saying, you want your children to tell you all of their secrets. What happens? What has changed? And we will talk about, go into more detail on this a little later, in terms of peers. What has changed over the years? What has changed is today, children are with peers from 3 months old in the daycare. We didn't have that when we were born. We were with grandparents, aunts, uncles, till we were 5 or 6. So what has happened? Now we are with peers. But I'll go into more detail on that. The child thinks that you are getting into their world when you say, "How's your day today?" How many of us take the time to recognize people? It is not common in our society. When was the last time any of your bosses in here told you, "You did a good job yesterday"? Do you hear that? That is good. That's all. Yes, there. Yes, that's good. It's uncommon. But the greatest impact in a child's life is the person who they have the closest attachments to. Children need to see the invitation to exist in our lives. They want an invitation. They don't want to say, "No, I don't like how daddy or mommy getting on. I don't want to talk to them." You want to create an environment. An environment has a big impact on our behaviors. A huge behavior. You know, there was an experiment with rats done years ago where they put these rats in individual cages and they put cocaine. Each rat was in an individual cage and they put cocaine in water and they put plain water. And each of the rats in these cages got addicted to the cocaine and eventually died. But there was a professor from Vancouver called Bruce Alexander. He decided, let's change the experiment. Let's change the experiment and let's create a rat park. So they created a rat park and they put a bigger cage, more rats in each cage, tunnels, wheels for them to play on. And what happened? None of those rats got addicted to the cocaine. Same rats. Well, not the one that died, but a new set. Same rats, but none of them. What changed? Only the environment. It's sort of like you coming home and seeing the dishes in the sink pile up. Do you feel like cooking? Just the environment alone will change your behavior. So, but I see this right here with the police service. We have bullies coming out of the police service, the schools, and they take them, and when they put them into the youth clubs, they change, their behavior changes. Why? Because now they are getting more validation, more interesting conversations. People who actually care about them. But what happens? This is what happens when you have a loss of that attachment. Even if you are there all the time, even if you are there 24/7, are you attaching to your child? Your child can have a loss of attachment when you are there all the time. You know, my son the other day told me, "Daddy, you're not listening. You're not listening." Okay, but I'm ready to listen when I hear that, because you know when we have to listen to our children. When we don't listen, then we are not there. We have to be in that moment with them, and that is what they need from us. And I know life is busy. I know it is. It will continue to be. In fact, it's going to get busier, depending on the kind of job you have. But it's going to get busier. But you see, what we are doing to them there is we are converting them. And the fear is that that temporary state could turn into a long-term trait. That is what we want to avoid. Try to avoid a temporary state from moving to a long-term trait. So when a child's energies are invested in a relationship where the attachment is threatened, the effects on the personality and behavior are dramatic. They don't often have the words to express themselves. So they have a coping mechanism. They will act out. They have a state of confusion, frustration. All of these things that go along with loss of attachment. So I want to finish my section here with a couple of points. Loving your children is not enough. You have to connect with them. We have to show up for them. This enables them to handle situations in times when we are not there. And what we think is a behavioral problem is really a relationship problem. We have to cherish that dependency that they have. But you might ask, well, shouldn't they be on their own one time, at some point? Yes, but only after your job is done. At least this part of it. So it is not about what you do. It is who you are to your child. Okay, I'll put you back on to Rhea now, who will go through a lot of the how-tos with this topic of emotion.
Everyone, I just want you to take a minute, just a minute, to just write down some epiphany, some idea that struck you, if you haven't already, and capture it. Everyone's going to write down something different. Whatever had meaning for you, or had you say, yeah, that really made me think. Take a minute, and we'll get into some more juicy stuff. Okay. We're good? So I'm going to start sharing with you now 10 things to do when your children are having a big emotion. So, the first thing that I want to say right from the beginning is emotions are really interesting. We as parents tend to be very biased towards some emotions compared to others. So for example, happiness, good. Joy, good. Sad, bad. Jealousy, bad. We don't want to be jealous. We don't want to be angry. We want to try and move and channel our children through all these emotions as quickly as possible, unless they're happy and joyful. So this is going to take a bit of a paradigm shift now, where we look at all the entire spectrum of emotion and recognize that there are no bad emotions. There are only big emotions. Jealousy, think about it. Everyone in here, if you have kids, there's probably been somebody who broke your heart at some point. Tell me what you learned from that relationship, from a broken heart. Did you have big emotions? Yeah. Did you feel maybe some jealousy, some anger, some rage? Did you learn something glorious from that experience, but who you are or who you will never be? Yes. So we learn a lot from these big emotions. So the example I like to use often is we as humans tend to be good hosts. And I want you to imagine as a good host, Joy, is it? You're Tony's mom? We've just met today, but I'm sure if I came to your home and I knocked on your door, and after this short meeting that we've had with each other, would you invite me in for a cup of tea? Yes, I believe so too. I want you to imagine that emotions, that when jealousy and anger and your rage, when your children's insecurity and loneliness comes to you, that we don't try and run from it, marginalize it, or sweep it under the rug. I want you to imagine that as a good host, we are going to invite them in. We're going to ask them to come in and stay a while, talk to me, teach me something. 80% of what we do lies in our unconscious mind. 80% of what we do, we're not even aware that we're doing it. We have all these emotions that are there, different parts of us, all these feelings. And guess what feelings are meant to be? They're meant to be felt. If I was a doctor and your child or you were feeling rage, and I were to check your physiology, I could see that, oh, your heart rate's up, your blood pressure's up, the cortisol levels in your body are high, your adrenaline levels, look at the clench in your fists, the sweat on your brow, all your physiology is showing an emotion of anger. Or it could be loneliness, or of jealousy, or of rage. Just think, even in the word anger, we tend to be very biased, by the way, about the words and the language, the emotional language we give our kids. We say, you happy? Are you mad? Are you sad? And as long as they're happy, we're trying to channel them away from anything to do with sadness or mad. But just in the mad has irritation and frustration and anger and rage. It's very ripe and meaty anger. And I haven't always been like this, but I've come to appreciate anger. That when it comes in and I invite it in, this is my opportunity to sit with my anger. And here's what happens when I sit with my anger. When I'm conscious enough to sit with it. I recognize that the only way that my unconscious mind can convey something to me through this anger, if I sit with this and I find the place in my body that I can create some space around it, and all of a sudden I realize that this anger, who so desperately wants to have the microphone, who so desperately wants to convey something to me, and all I'm doing is shoving it away, or teaching my kids to shove it, let's lock it in the bathroom. And all of a sudden, what happens to anger when it's locked in the bathroom? What do you think? It gets angrier. He's saying, what about me? What about me? I'm here to teach you something. I deserve a place in the sun, don't I? That's what our emotions are here to do. They're there to be felt. So when anger comes, when jealousy comes, we sit there and we honor it, and we thank it for being here. Very different than what we've been taught in some cases. So there's no bad feelings, using that example. There's only big feelings. And what I'm going to walk you through is how all of these various big feelings that might come, how can we navigate our children through that expansive and complicated labyrinth so they can get out the other side. And guess who else needs to get out of it? Yourself. Because just as Tony said, our nervous systems, that fight or flight, we are tied. Our nervous systems are tied to our children. So if we're holding on to the anger or trying to take on their emotional state, then it's like two atoms circling each other, and both are frazzly. And they're just getting more and more frazzly as it moves around and circles. So we want to unfrazzle. Who's up for unfrazzling? Yeah? You want to have some good hacks for unfrazzling? Okay, good stuff. So 10 steps. First one. This could break my neck if I had to look up there. 1, regulate your own emotions to calm your nervous system down. Folks, this one, highlight it, make a big star next to it, draw a big happy face or sad face or anything you want next to it, something that can highlight this one, and I'll tell you why. Because your ability to calm your emotional state down when everything is falling around and the curtains are being pulled down and everyone's pressing your last button, this one is the source of all of your power. Always. How well you can calm your nervous system down is going to be a direct function of how quickly you can move into your higher thinking brain. How well you can reason out and not say something that offends, or say something that hurts, or say something that creates a paper cut, or say something you're going to have to go and heal and have regret about afterwards. So, how do we begin to process our emotions? By the way, there's 2 parts to this. So I want to give you an example of how this would work out as we're going through this 10-step process. I want you to imagine that you have 2 children. Some of you have 1, but you have 2 children, and one child feels like they're marginalized. One child feels like they're just not getting as much love as the other. I don't know why they feel that way. Because in your heart you're thinking, I love them both equally. But yet they're feeling that. And then all of a sudden they become shoppers. Shopaholic. Where is mommy or daddy, or both, or one? Where are they just trying to love my sister more than they're trying to love me? So all of a sudden, let's suppose your son comes home, and then they see in that moment, well, you didn't get up as quick to come and tend to me or see about me. You were busy with my sister. This is all happening in the drama, in the story making, in the meaning making mind of theirs. Of course, we're totally oblivious to this. We are just going about our day, unaware that meanwhile in dark crevices, meaning is being made about who mommy loves best. Yeah? So, that child now feels deep down, he feels sad. Yeah? But that sadness starts to turn to frustration because he's seeing it time and time again because he's shopping the world for that. And then all of a sudden, he gets angry one day. And in his anger, he pushes his sister and he throws down the vase. He's mad now. Let me tell you a little secret about anger. And this is something, whether you have kids in the audience or you don't, is just a really good, powerful thing to remember. And that is, whenever you see somebody that's angry, whenever, there's always something primary behind it. Anger is always a secondary emotion. The primary emotion is always some sort of fear. That changes the game entirely. In my example right there with the 2 children, what's the fear? What's the fear of the son? Somebody. What's that? Feeling unloved. That deep down, I wonder if mommy actually loves me. That's his fear. But he didn't have the words and the language to say, mommy, I'm feeling so lonely right now. I really need a hug. I really want something from you. Can you hug me? I'm getting this feeling, I think it feels like jealousy, and I just feel like you like my sister more than you like me. Can you help me through this? And then what would we do, everyone? We would drop to our knees. We would look our children in their eyes and we'd say, oh, we would hug them, bring them close. Go, tell me about your pain. Teach me what you need. So in that moment, that child is going to feel heard and feel understood. Regulating our own emotions is now a function of how well we can become aware of what's happening in the background, what the whole background story is, such that when we see him push his sister and pull down the drapes, that we understand there's a whole other context there that I'm not aware of. That I ask the question, what is the fear that's at the root of my child's pain? So in that space is a function of how well I can process my own emotions first. Yes? Meaning that before I tend to the children, his nervous system is tied to mine, so I need to make sure that all of this is looked after. Because that's why I say I'm not a believer in timeouts personally. I believe in time-ins. Timeouts are for the parents. You get frustrated, you take a timeout. The minute you recognize that your voice, your tone, your energy, sometimes if you get very attuned to your own body, we'll talk a bit about body work in a second, you'll start to recognize that your body is constantly giving you signals. And I didn't eat, and my husband did something, and that bugged me, and work just asked me for something again, and all of a sudden, it all leads up to a frustrated behavior by a child, and then I blow up. Why did you hit her? Why did you throw that down? Don't you know? Didn't I talk to you about this? But we know now that there's a whole context. And to have all that get lost in the conversation, lost in translation, that's kind of heartbreaking, isn't it? That would be heartbreaking. But remember, our children are going to be a function of how much emotional language they even have, how much courage they have to self-express, to tell you in that moment, this is what I need from you, mommy, this is what I'm feeling right now, and I know what the feeling is, it's jealousy, can you help me? So, we're going to be walking through ways we can give our children emotional language, where we can connect with our children, but before we can ever do that, I have to do the work here. I have to learn how to self-soothe. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit later how we can self-soothe, and then how you can help your child self-soothe. And it always involves going inside of your body. Something really important that we just need to know about feelings, because we talk about feelings are something that need to be felt. When I feel anger, remember we talked about the entire physiology of it? Anger is simply a word that I've given for that physiology. It sits in me. I'll tell you where my anger is. It's right here. I know it. I didn't always know where my anger was in my body, but I know it now. I've known it for years because I've slowly cultivated this. I never was very good at reading into my body. I would just wait until I kind of snapped and then have to do, work. And I don't want to do work, but I find my anger's here. It feels like somebody's stepping on my chest. And so now, there's a whole different game that I play. Now I can go walk through the world and go, wait a second. Feels like something's stepping on my chest, feeling uncomfortable here, something must be stressing me, I might be feeling a feeling right now. What's the feeling? Oh, the feeling's anger. As opposed to going, I'm angry, and then either not even or perhaps not even tapping into our body. We just gave it this word, anger. We could have called it blah. Seriously, we just gave it a word so that our mind can make sense of a physical feeling that we're feeling. So your jealousy, your loneliness, your sadness, your fear, all has a physiology to it. So the question now becomes, how can I become? This can sound kind of woo-woo. I get it. When I first heard this stuff, I thought, what kind of new agey, kind of woo-woo stuff are we talking about? Getting into your body and feeling your feelings? So I did what I like to do when I hear stuff that makes me go, huh? I decided to do my own empirical study. As Tony said, I coach parents around the world. I've been doing this for over a decade. And I ask my clients, many who in the early days I coached for free, and I ask them to go inside their body and find the place where your pain lives, where your anger lives, where your frustration lives. And if I walk you through a guided way in order to get through it, could we go from a 9 or a 10 to a 5, to a 4, or to a 3? And you can. So I'm gonna show you exactly how I do that in just a minute. Oops. Okay, 2, attune. This is your verbal and nonverbal cues. Okay, so let's go back to the example where my son is shopping the world for where he's not as important and not as loved as his sister. So attunement is where, how well can I watch the cues? Remember the radio and the radio dials? We're looking for the perfect radio station, right? That's what attuning is, you're tuning in. You are looking at all the cues, the verbal and the nonverbal. So verbal cues are where a child goes, I'm waiting for you. Meanwhile, I might be tending to my daughter. Or a nonverbal cues are everything that's nonverbal. So it's how his eyes are looking at me, it's his tone of voice, it's the way he's standing, it's his gestures, it's everything about his body language, everything that's nonverbal. And guess what? 80% of how somebody converses with others is nonverbal. So we got to get very good. We got to put on our detective hats. We got to hunt for all the amazing data that's coming through at every moment in time from our children. If we've got 8 balls in the air, we're going to miss the cues. And then what happens is our children, who may be stunted because of their language and the courage and their self-expression, that part that says, love me, love me, love me, never gets an opportunity to come out. And we never get a chance to drop to our knees, look them in the eyes and go, I love you. And I'm sorry that you felt that way. And teach me what I can do. I want to learn. You're such a good teacher. Teach me. And then we get a chance to heal it. But we're going to miss out on that. We don't want to miss out on that. So we want to look at all the cues that are being given every moment when our children are around us. That's our function of our awareness, our consciousness, our verbal and nonverbal cues. 3, acknowledge, validate, and name the feeling. Okay, so we're just going to go through. Oh, okay. I'm losing the plot here. Where are we? Acknowledge, validate, and name the feeling. Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about that, how important it is to name the feeling. That's number 3. I'm going to get into this a bit more, into exactly how you're going to do this. Name the feeling. 4, how you identify with the feeling. If my son's having a feeling, I need to allow my child to feel like I really understand what's going on. So there's a way that we can do that. Create a story or a narrative. This is how we can paraphrase what's happening so the child really registers that their pain is heard. Believe there's always a kernel of truth. So this is where we take perspectives and context with our children. 7 is where we get rid of our ego. Ego likes to run the show often with our children. We're going to help our children process the feeling and find the teachable moments. Okay, so let's start with the first one. How do we regulate our emotions? Okay, remember I told you this is where we source all of our power from? Because how can we ask our children to be calm, collected? How can we connect with them if we are in a dysregulated state? So, we're not going to get scientific here, no more than Tony did, but we have left brain, right brain. Our left brain is the logical side. The left brain likes all L words. It's loves lists, it's linear, it's logical. It's analytical too. It likes to think about things. We love the left side of our brain. How do we know that? Because the school spends a lot of time building left brain things, such as math and technology and science. Even reading is from left to right. Ooh, the left brain gets lots of love. The right brain is the creative side. The right brain is the one who looks at the big picture. The right brain is the emotional side. The right brain wants to connect with others. So, when we want to regulate our emotions, the first thing we need to recognize is that we are emotional creatures, and that's just what us humans are. And we need to try and move from two different places in our minds. One is from the emotional flood that we're in, because we're angry, or we're jealous, we're sad, we're in a right brain flood. So we don't want to hang out too much there, because then we're just one big weepy, cryy mess, right? Yelling and screaming. We don't want to hang out in the left brain either, because if we hang out in the left brain, then we're just in the world, we're like Data from Star Trek, or Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. We are just, give me the facts, ma'am, only the facts. You're like in a desert over there. So we can't hang out in the left brain. Our goal as parents, our goal is to try and help our children integrate both their left and their right sides. Help build the neural connections. So I'm going to walk you through exactly how. What would you do, what would you say to build the connections between the right and the left brain? We want them to be able to, yes, be in their emotional side, but then be able to move into something that's more logical on how to handle the situation. Tony mentioned earlier about the triune brain. The brain developed in at different stages. Generally, when a child is hijacked, or meaning they're angry, or they're feeling a big emotion, they're in their most basic primal, sometimes I call it the reptilian brain. Fight, flight, freeze. For them to move from that brain to their higher thinking brain, this one, this gorgeous one up here, that allows you to even have feelings about your feelings. That's what the prefrontal cortex does. So the other part is that we want to be able to integrate our lower thinking brain, part where we want to go, pull down everything, scream and shout, to our higher thinking brain. We want to integrate that up vertically. So this is the skill sets if we build, we can also help our children build it. So that's what I'm going to show you in just a moment here. So how do we regulate emotions? Starts with this. Remember, the timeout is for me, and the time in is for the kid. So that means that in the situation where my son is feeling marginalized or a little bit unloved, this is where I go, okay. Now, let's suppose I'm triggered. He's just broken something and he's just put his sister. I take a moment. I literally go right there, or I say, hey, I just need to take a moment so I can go and breathe. Or I need to just take a moment so I can go and calm down. That's where I go from but there's one actually important thing I need to do before that. I need to register that I'm actually feeling a feeling. So there's something about naming the feeling that allows us to go to our higher thinking brain. Just the sheer act that we begin to name it. This is why it's so important for our children to learn really rich emotional language as early as possible. So I could say to myself, okay, I'm feeling really angry inside right now, and I'm going to start with 3 deep breaths. 3 deep diaphragmatic breaths. So what I want to do is the fastest way to calm our nervous system down. It sounds so simple, you're thinking it couldn't be just that. Try it out as well. Try at least going to your breath the minute you feel frustrated by something that your child does, and naming the feeling that you're feeling. Most of us, I'll tell you, most of us have no clue what we're feeling at any given moment in time. We know when we're ready to tell someone off. We know when we're maybe really sad, but the ins and outs of the daily activities, we're not really clued in after we've had that interaction with this person or that person, what emotion that we're feeling at any moment. So what I do is I take my 3 breaths. I usually do a 4, 5, 6. Some of you who have heard me speak before might have heard of this. 4, 5, 6 is where I breathe in through my nose for 4, I hold it for 5, I breathe out for 6. So it's like this. Let's do it together. Come on, let's do it. We're going to do 4, 5, 6, starting now. Ready? They have found, this is cutting edge, the fastest way we can begin to break the seal of the anger and the frustration that's clouding over us is by breathing so we can calm our nervous system, okay? Then I look for the place in my body. Now, most of us didn't have parents that may have talked about, well, go into your body. But an emotion, as I spoke about before, is something that occurs in the body. So what we want to do is find the place in our body that actually the emotion lives. So what I do for myself and what I tell my clients, and by the way, I was never good at this. This is something I cultivated over time. As I say to myself, oh, okay, the vase just broke. He just pushed his sister. I'm feeling a lot of tension. I've scanned my body and I find it, and it's usually in my chest. I know that now. Okay, and then I become a detective. I become a curious detective, and I am going to excavate like an archaeologist and figure out what is there in that lives in that emotion. So what I do is I give it an intensity from 1 to 10. Well, it feels like about a 9 right now, yeah? And the color looks kind of red, very much, no, not fire engine red, more like a blood red. It's very thick and viscous. It's got a pimply top on the thing, and it's swirling, and it looks like tar moving. Like that level of granularity. Get very granular with it. Some of you might be thinking, what is that woman talking about? That sounds so bizarre and stupid, and I don't know, it's where she came from. Where'd she come from? And what I want to invite you to do is to try it out. Take it on as an empirical study for yourself to see that if you begin to scan your body, I mean, we've already spoken about that anger is something that's physiological. Here's the thing that I think is really important for parents to know, and that is when somebody, either I as a grown-up or a child, and this generally happens in childhood, when somebody, a child, is feeling an emotion like anger or jealousy, imagine what that feels like in the child system. And they don't even have a word for it. I mean, a 2-year-old could feel jealous because one kid could do a roly-poly and they can't. But they don't have a word for that. They can't say, I feel jealous. So what happens is the jealousy sits in them, and that's really scary. I mean, we're at least grown-ups. We can go, okay, jealousy. But for them, they go, I don't like what this feels like. Doesn't feel good. And what they do is they go like this. I don't want to feel it no more. And they start to disassociate from their feeling. And this is how, through time and time again, how you have children that grow up disassociated from their feelings, unaware. I speak to them all the time. There's no make wrong. It's just they're unaware that they're having this entire myriad complexity of emotions that everyone should feel. They've been told, put on a happy face, smile, tell the world you're happy. Don't talk and be present and authentic and vulnerable about who you really are. Nobody wants to know that. I think that we're dying to see other people's authentic selves. And the more that we become our true authentic selves, the more we offer to people the inspiration and the ability to step into their power to be authentic and vulnerable. So what I notice is as I go into my body and I find the place that my anger lives, then I'm able to do something. Then I notice something very curious. The anger starts to morph and change. It's almost like the anger that was marginalized and stuck in the bathroom all of a sudden says, oh, so you're checking me out now, are you? And he's happy, he's getting happier because the color starts to change, the intensity starts to change, and I just stay with it. Usually, just as Tony showed you the sine wave, every emotion has a sine wave, an undulating wave where you think about it, we get stuck in our he said, she said, coulda, woulda, shoulda. If only my husband didn't say this, I wouldn't be mad. What I'm asking you to do and try out is something totally different. Instead of staying in your head, having it be a cognitive process, recognize that emotions and feelings are somatic, a psychosomatic thing. So go into your body to process the emotion. It's dying to be heard. Imagine anger as a person. Give it a personality, give it a framing, and give it a chance to speak to you. And when you do that, you'll find that anger starts to lessen. The feeling starts to not hold on so tightly to you. You don't get shackled to it as much. If some of you are still thinking this is too weird, what I can say is, how's the alternative working? The alternative is where you're completely frustrated and you move through like a tornado through the house, and then the children are feeling the wind whirl of it and everyone's wrapped up in it. Yeah? That's the alternative. So for those of you who can quickly get out of your fight or flight or your anger or whatever, that's not for you. Somehow you've managed to tap into the secret sauce. But for those of you who find yourselves locked in emotion, ruminating, thinking, wondering, why'd she say this, why'd she do this, and you find yourself there for long periods of time, I invite you to try this as another option. So we want to get down and get very intimate with the emotions that are in our body. Okay? Think of Curious Detective. Attunement. Okay, so this is where, again, we are reading and responding to our children's cues and consistently providing caring support to them. So, getting back to my example, my child is feeling sad. He's just broken a vase, he's just pushed his sister, so he's angry. I'm seeing anger displayed. This is what I do in this moment now. In that moment, I could choose that moment to berate him. I could choose to give him all the logical reasons how we talked about how to behave in the household. I could choose to lecture him and use a lot of left brain rationale. But I want to invite you to do something different. When somebody is hijacked in an emotional hijack, they can't even listen to your reasoning. Everything you say to them will just either, in that moment, you actually have the power to either connect or to disconnect with your child. So if you want to connect, how about this? We drop down to their eye level. Not lord over them, because we're like way taller. We drop down to their eye level, and we say to them, wow, you must be really angry right now. Is that how you're feeling, really angry? If you have older kids, you could say that with less of the, you could say that, oh, I can see that you're angry right now. Something happened that hurt you. I really want to understand what it was. Because whatever it is, I'm sure that it makes perfect sense. And I need to understand this. And I'm sorry for, maybe there was something I said or did that I'm not even aware of. But can you help me? Can you guide me? And in that space, my child might feel close in proximity, closely attuned to me, enough to start to reveal what's really at the root of it. Whatever was hurting him, that he's been carrying for a while now. This attunement, when we think of attunement, we want to think of everything about our verbal and nonverbal language. We want to think about, how am I looking at my child? What does my voice tone say? What is my body language saying? Is everything about my words and my body language in alignment that says, I'm eager, I'm listening, I'm curious, I want to know, I'm here for you, I'm with you right now. You want to make sure that they're both in alignment. Name the feeling. This is so important to be able to give our children an emotional language. We are giving them an access out of their pain when we give them language. So, for all of you, it doesn't matter whether we have no children and we're saying this to our partners. When we're feeling a feeling, we want to actually use the word. So for our children, don't just stay with mad, sad, or happy. If we were giving our children a piece of fruit and we were giving them a grapefruit, we wouldn't say plum because it's a shorter word. We'd say the word grapefruit. So a child can understand what jealousy is. They can understand what your rage is or frustration. So what I would say is, are you feeling angry right now? Is that what you're feeling? Why am I saying that? Because I want my child to start learning the word so he can use the word. So when my 2-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old is feeling jealous or angry, they can go, Mommy, I'm feeling jealous right now. And then you can do something, because then you can find the root of the problem other than when the vase breaks or they've hit their sister. The next part is to identify with the feeling. Identify the feeling is how much does your child feel like you are in the trenches with them? When they tell you that I feel jealous that my friend's having a birthday party and I'm not, In that moment, I can choose to say, well, you're going to have a birthday party next week, and you had one last year, and don't be jealous. But in that moment, what's happening is the child is feeling that they're not supposed to be feeling that feeling. They're being shamed or wronged. We're trying to move them away from actually feeling it. But if I could create some sort of empathy, I want to take a quick moment to show you a distinction between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is when your friend gets a job, doesn't get the job that they really want, and we say something like, oh, you didn't get the job? That really sucks. You deserve that job. You know what, that's really too bad. Your dog died? I know how much you love that dog. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's sympathy. Empathy is something totally different. Empathy requires many more parts of the brain to light up. Empathy is where we go into our memory banks and find the place where our dog or something close to it has died, be it our goldfish or a family member or something where we can tap into the feeling and embody it. Where we can remember so that when we speak, every pore from our body, every ounce of our being goes, I'm in the trenches with you. I feel your pain. I was there. I remember that time I wanted that job so badly. I was devastated. And then, once somebody feels connected to you, be it a friend, a spouse, or your child, because I've led with the right brain, then you earn their trust. You earn their listening. They go, oh, mommy gets me. Mommy gets my pain. And then they'll follow you anywhere. A client of mine recently said, their child asked, he was being bullied a little bit at school, and he goes, Mommy, do you ever hate anybody? And so the mom was saying, gosh, I didn't know what to say in that moment, because to say that hate's okay would be to let him think that it's okay to hate. So she said, I didn't know what to say, so I said no. What do you think that child was trying to figure out in that moment? He was feeling an emotion. He didn't have a name for it, but for that kid that was bullying him on the school ground, it felt a lot like hate. And so the mom is doing the best she can, but what he wants to know in that moment is, do you feel my pain? Do you feel, it feels like hate, I don't know what it is. In that moment, with the mother dropped down and goes, I remember I felt so angry, it felt like rage, it took over my whole body, and I just felt like I wanted to punch him in the face. That's what it felt like. Now, we don't have to worry here as parents. Does that teach my children something bad? Are they gonna think it's okay to punch someone in the face? No. You know why? Because we're going to look for the teachable moment. But 99.9% of the time, when we give the teachable moment, which is the left brain, the logical side, the higher thinking prefrontal cortex side, that doesn't happen in the moment. 99.9% of the time, when we want to impart knowledge and wisdom, and this is what you should do next time, it doesn't happen when the breakdown's happening. This works for wives and husbands and partners and friends. It happens, the teachable moment comes long after the breakdown occurs. So as a parent, what we need to get good at is footnoting. What is the lesson that's ripe in that experience? And I have to remember, at a place when my child feels all wumpy and lovey-dovey with me, like right before bed, and talk to my child and say, hey, you know, today I saw that you were really angry, you're really frustrated. In that moment, you pushed your sister. That's the moment you have your child's listening. That's what we want to get to. So we want to always identify with the feeling. Create a narrative. Storytelling, that is one of the most pervasive ways through all the generations of our ancestors have learned and carried on information. So Tony? Was I just pressing it nonstop as I was talking? Oh. Okay. Yeah, create a narrative. Beautiful. Create a narrative. Okay, I know everyone's getting probably snacky, so I'm going to go through these really quickly. Create a narrative is how well we can tell stories. If we're able to use stories to extract what's going on with our children so that we can relay, so that we can show that we understand. So this is where we paraphrase. An example I would use is for my son who's broken the vase and pushed his sister. So when you came home yesterday, you came in and you saw that I was sitting down with your sister and you felt that I didn't come and greet you at the door. Is that what happened? Yeah, that's what happened. And did you feel that I'm often sitting next to her bed than your bed? Yes? And what else are you feeling? So notice how there's like a dance that we're doing. I ask a question, they give some information. I ask for information, they respond back. That's how we create what we call a narrative. And when we create narratives with our kids, what we can do is get all of the stuff that's hiding in different parts of their being. Get it out. Why do we want it out? Because we don't want it to sit there and create gangrene and have some story about mommy doesn't love me. I don't want them to have that. That would be a tragedy to know that I love my son so much and he goes out into the world thinking I loved his sister more than I loved him. Perspectives and context. I love this one. Perspective is literally trying to climb into somebody else's world and see the world from somebody else's point of view. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning. How do we do this? Okay, this is the ninja trick. Whenever your child tells you something, you don't listen to me. You love so-and-so more than you love me. Believe for just one moment that there's a kernel of truth in what they've just said. Why? Because it's a much more powerful place for us to hold as if what they're telling us is true. Because in that place, our heart gets blown wide open. That's where we put on our curious detective hat and ask questions and seek information. But if we don't hold it, there's a kernel of truth, and I get into an entire lawyer's argument as to why, didn't I hug you yesterday and I spent the whole day with you? What we do is we have them feeling bad or shamed or what they're feeling as if what they said isn't true. You with me? So we don't want that. We want to believe in that moment, actually authentically believe that I'm only seeing the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole context that I'm not privy to. So what I want to do is take their perspective, ask the questions. Ego. Okay. Ego is something that we find ourselves. Here's how you know you're an ego. Whenever you find yourself in a power struggle with your children and wanting to be right, you are an ego. How many people have spent a lot of time there? Yeah. So, ego is how the identity, the way we see ourselves in the world. It's the part that thinks and feels, I am me. So how do we get out of our ego? Is the minute we recognize that we're in a tug of war, a power struggle with our children, that we look at them and we tell them, maybe there's something that I'm doing. What can I do to love you more? What can I do so that my love lands? When you ask these questions, you're inviting your child to give you feedback, to allow you to grow, to allow you to love them in the way they want and need to be loved. But if I'm just focusing on what I believe is right, what I believe is true, and I don't get into their world, I'll never gain their listening. We're not trying to raise kids who just blindly follow us. We want to woo our children. Just like when we had our partners, when we first met them, people even use that word anymore, woo, courting them. We are constantly wooing our children to want to stay in this exquisite dance with us. And the way we do that is how well we can listen, attune, connect with them. I just want to briefly talk about energetically pulling love away. Very briefly, it's something that we do often without even thinking. Okay. I must not know what I'm pressing because I'm just... The cost of energetically pulling love away. Have we ever been with our children and they frustrated us so much, they're not sitting up the way we want to, and we look at them and we go like this? We give them it's like, the look that could kill, right? The look where they go, pull your socks up, get your stuff together. It's the look that says, I've had enough, I don't want to hear it anymore, sort yourself out. We all do it. We may now become more conscious of when we do it. Because we do it because maybe in front of other people, auntie, uncle, grandma, we want our kids to look like they're well behaved and they're well trained and not some, crazy wild children. However, I want you to know that there's a cost to it. Yeah? The cost is this. Every time I look at my child and I give them that look, because they know that I'm their source of love and protection and want to be in connection with me, every time I give them that look, they are scared. They're scared because in that moment I'm pulling love away. This is exactly what I'm saying. With my eyes, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to give you the look of death. And the look of death means that I'm going to show you that I don't love you in this moment. And that what the child internalizes is, I don't want to lose mommy's love or daddy's love, so I'm going to do whatever the heck they say. There is a cost to giving those looks. Does that make us bad parents if we've given it? I've given that look, believe me. Mike, I told my girlfriend not so long ago and she was so happy. She goes, I'm so glad to hear you do that. But where I'm going with this is understand that when we see our children aren't interacting, I don't care who's around. I don't care about what other people think of me. In that moment, I'm going to try and connect with my children. I'm going to try and do what needs to be done, say what needs to be said, and try to the best of my ability to bring my consciousness to not giving them those looks, because those looks come at a cost. Okay, we're wrapping up quickly before snack. Process the feeling. So we talked a bit about this. At the beginning, when I said you go and you do the body scan and you find in your body where anger lives, where your jealousy lives, where your child's loneliness lives, this is where you now, as their guide, as their leader, helps begin to take them on a journey into their own body, a somatic journey to find the place where their own anger is. So for my son or daughter, if you're feeling a really big emotion, the minute they start, they're at the height of it, I ask them, where do you feel your anger? Where is it in your body? 99.9% of the time they'll tell me that it's in their chest. And I'll ask them to breathe with me. Let's take 3 deep breaths together. And let's stay with it. What they're getting to learn is that anger is here for a reason. It has something to communicate. Let's open up our ears. Let's allow for it. Don't shove it in the corner. Don't lock it behind in the bathroom. Let's listen to our anger and see what it has to teach us. Stay with the emotion, and then I ask them, what color is it? Where is it moving? Is it moving in this way or is it this way? I'm simply there as a guide to ask them questions, to help them process the feeling. And when we do this, and there's other things you can do. You can get your child to move. You can get your child to dance. They might put on the radio. But when you get them into their body and actually feeling their feelings, what you'll notice is they spend a lot less time feeling angry or hijacked by the emotion. Teachable moments, I've already talked about that. Teachable moments is 99.9% of the time is where we find the time and the place where the information that can land about how we redirect. So, rule of thumb, lead with the right brain, emotion, connection, understanding. Redirect with the left brain. When they're calm and they're soothed, you're soothed, they're soothed, you're all cuddled up at night on the bed, remind them about what happened, and then you brainstorm together. You collaborate. Hey, I know she got really angry, and you push your sister. What can you do the next time you're angry? What can you say? How can you handle that? And now your child has some strategies in their pocket, in their arsenal, to handle their anger in the future. That's what we want to get them to. And lastly, something that we often forget, and that is to blow on the embers. That is to blow in the embers. Meaning, catch them doing something good, when they're using emotional language, when they're going into their body and doing something to soothe themselves. I remember early on in my son's life, he was able to recognize that when he felt angry, sometimes at me, he could go into the bedroom, turn on his radio, and just come out a few minutes later and go, I feel better. Because music is one of those wonderful things that allows us to get into our bodies. Tony talked about this a bit earlier, about emotions being contagious. Emotions are contagious. It goes to the most dominant person in the room, to the person that is in the space. So just recognize that if we're coming home from work and we're going to interact with our children, take a moment to clear ourselves. I do a midi meditation before I even wake the children up, just so I can be in a place to receive them after I wake them up in the morning. Before I pick them up from school, I would take a moment to do a little mini meditation, because I was in the world of me. And all of a sudden I want to be in the world of me. But the world of we involves noise and bickering sometimes and confusion. But I want that when I meet with them that they're getting the best of me. So I want to make sure that I recognize what is my emotional state and do something to calm my system down. Usually I do that through my breath. Okay, just before snack, I just want to give you, I think, just 2 quick things that you can have in your pocket tonight. What do I do when there's a breakdown happening in the household? I want you to imagine that whatever's playing out between you and your child tonight when you go home, and you're thinking, okay, I went to a parenting seminar, and what the heck did she say again? Something about go into your body. What the heck was that woo stuff? Okay, I want you to imagine this. It's a really good hack. Imagine you are seeing this play out. Whatever's happening between you and your child, play out on a movie screen. And you are sitting down watching the movie screen in front of you. And the mother is interacting with that child. Ask yourself, in that moment, what would that mother be saying or doing with that child that would have you looking at it and go, I like that. I'm clapping for her. Go you. What did she have to do with her ego? Putting it to the side. What did she have to do with her authenticity and her vulnerability, talking about her own pain or her own mommy and daddy story that allows the child to feel like she's in the trenches with him. Whatever that is on the movie screen of your life, do that, because that's not going to lead you astray. And lastly, there's no statute of limitations to healing. As I spoke about all these things, you might think, well, gosh, what about all those times where I left a paper cut on my child's heart? What do I do then? Here's the deal. There are things that I recognize as I've evolved and grown as a human that I said a year ago, or I did a year ago. And I go back to my children and I say, you know what? I was thinking about this the other day that I never, or I didn't, or I should have, or I'd like to, but this is what I'm committed to now. There is no statute of limitations to heal something with somebody. And once you know that, then you know that there are no bad moments in parenting. Because some of the parenting moments where had me in breakdown and had me pulling out my hair, when I was able to go back and heal it with my children, the level of intimacy and exquisiteness and conversation and relating that came from that was, I'm glad the breakdown happened. And it could have only happened because of the breakdown. So there are no bad moments in parenting if we know how to heal. Okay, so that just concludes the first part of our session. Thank you. I'm sure everybody would love to get a coffee and love to get a snack. And so I'd like to invite all of you to lead yourselves up to the top of the stairs through the back double doors. No, we're going to be leading out this side. And there's tables that are set up with coffee, teas, and juices. There's a snack box. The only thing is that we can't bring food back in here, even though it's kind of chilly. So drink your coffee and your teas or your juices, and just keep everything outside if that's okay. And then we'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, everybody, let's start back. Now, as you notice, we spend a lot of time talking about emotions, and the reason for that is because emotions dictate everything from here. Emotions dictate everything that we are going to talk about for the rest of the day. What is self-esteem? Self-esteem is one of the challenges that we found coming back from a lot of schools. Self-esteem is really the opinion each person has of himself. Your self-belief, in other words, as a person. But look at where we started. When we were children, we were able to point for what we wanted. We had a goal and purpose. We used to provoke courage to ask questions and share information without fearing judgment. We used to persist and keep going. I want a pack of cheese sticks and I want it now. No didn't affect us. It didn't affect us. So, you know, one of the things, especially about that second point, without fearing judgment. That point of I am not enough seems to affect many of us on a constant basis. You know, a few years ago, I took my daughter to this friend of ours, and they had a pool on the compound. And We were playing in the pool by ourselves. It was just her and I, and she was eating a pack of cheese sticks that she just negotiated for. So with all the jumping around, she threw up a little bit in the pool. And I just it was bright yellow, so I just took it out and threw it out of the pool one time. So nobody saw, because it was just both of us in the pool. So what happened was, this tenant just came afterwards and about to jump in the pool, and the first thing she said as she saw him, "I vomited in the pool!" So we fear judgment. We grew up like that. Toddlers, it is a toddler's nature to explore, to observe, to be creative. When I was a child, I used to make this. Does anybody recognize this? Yes, we used to make this from things we found around the house. We had such creativity. Such creativity. And when we talk about emotions, there are two types of emotion. There's negative emotion and positive emotion. Negative emotion, it has a narrowing effect on you. If you have a stone in your shoe, do you leave it there? You don't leave it there. You stop one time and take it out, because that negative emotion just narrows the effect of one specific behavior. If there's a traffic light, a red traffic light, it doesn't matter how bad you feel you are, you're going to stop when it's red. Especially if you're coming Twin City traffic light. You're going to stop there. Nobody don't break that just like that. I mean, they break it when it's just about to change, but not when it's red. So, positive emotion creates that creativity. A lot of what Rhea spoke about in the last session keeps our kids positive, the emotion positive. And when you are positive, creativity, you could go in any direction. But because negative emotion had such a narrowing effect, don't do that, go to your room, blah, 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 has a very narrowing effect. They will behave, but it has a different effect. So when we look at how we grew up, we have to relearn these skills, to point, to provoke, to persist, even when there's so much negativity around us. But where does low self-esteem come from? High parental expectations. Overprotective parents at times. Poor school experiences. And we have a lot of those ongoing from time to time. Learning difficulties. Lack of hobbies, extracurricular activities. Abuse in the home. But media and advertising also, as we get older, shows us that we should look this way. We should drive this, and we should smell like that. Like a strawberry. We judge and measure ourselves not by our own norm, by somebody else's norm. We are therefore never good enough. So what are the symptoms of self-esteem? Those symptoms include inability to trust others, aggressive behavior, gossiping, resentment of others, criticism of others, inability to take criticism, defensiveness, procrastination. Those are some of the symptoms. And inability to accept compliments. But what needs to be developed? And this is where I want to spend a bit of time. I'll put all of them here. To believe in ourselves. This belief in ourselves dictates all of the others. Solve personal and interpersonal problems. Manage impulses. Express feelings effectively. Relate well with others. Now, we have certain circuitry in our body. We have certain things like endorphins, dopamine, enzymes to control impulse. Those things have to be used in order to be developed. It's just like sight and walking. We are born not being able to see. We are all born immature. Or, sorry, not immature, but what's the word I'm looking for? Premature. We are all born premature. When we are born, we can't see, we can't walk. We are not like a horse that can walk on the first day. It's very different. But we have to use this. We have to use, if you put a baby in a dark room for 5 years, they will be blind because the visual circuits are not getting a chance to be used. So we have to find all kinds of ways to improve belief. And belief has a question mark for many people. Belief has a question mark because maybe we have never done this before. One specific example that comes to mind is I was in the Cub Scouts and the Scouts years ago while I was growing up, about 12 or 13 years old. I had to do my cooking test. And the Scout leader told me to just walk with my chicken, raw, potatoes, raw. So I came up to the Scout meeting with all my food to cook. Now I was under the impression I was getting the kitchen in the back. So he showed me the grass and he said, go and cook it. Now, I have seen it before. Now, what do you think was going through my mind? As a parent observing me, what am I feeling? What are you feeling? All of these things. But because I had the encouragement, that environment that we create around our kids when we compliment them was increasing. So I dug the hole. I got all kinds of wood and lit it, and it took me about half an hour just to light a piece of wood. I was fanning it, got all the coals in there, added more wood, and eventually I had a hole that was filled with coal. So I dug a little hole, put the foil with the chicken in there, and fan in. That took another half an hour. But it was done, and it tasted great, and I got my cooking badge. But what did I do? I completed something. I completed something that I have never done before. All of the doubt that I had before, I now had a belief. Because I acted, I got a result, and what did results drive? It drove my belief. This is what we do every time we take action. But what gives us that commitment to act? It is the environment that we create around our kids. What kind of environment do we create there? We have to encourage people. Because now, what do I have through that process? I have experience. But I also had a good environment to work in. It's very important that we create the right environment to develop self-esteem in our children. So, what do we need to do? Every time we have a goal, our kids have a goal, and Rhea will go into more detail on this. Your mind will more quickly accept small changes when you have these steps in place. When you have these steps in place, it makes it easier. When you have for anybody in here, if you have a goal and you are so far from that goal, what happens to us is that we procrastinate. It seems so far away. And for any of those kids who we have to take care of, they have a goal too. But the goal, if it seems so far away, if you don't break it down into steps and make the first step compelling enough to go after, they are not going to go after it. There's going to be a lot of procrastination, a lot of, I can't, and I can't, and I can't. You know, my mom used to tell me when I was small, there's no such word as can't. It didn't stick with me yet. But as I got older, I realized that was important, an important word. There are a lot of words that we sometimes have to avoid using. Things like try. I'm going to try to move that chair over there. No, I'm going to move that chair over there. As soon as you use the word try, it sort of has a hypnotizing effect on us. And this is something that we want to just be aware of as we move forward. But everything centers around how do we improve belief. Because experience, if you have done something over and over again, we create a habit. You know, I just want to make a point about habits before I give the mic to Rhea. Habits are so unconscious in us. They are so unconscious. We are not, when we have habits, it doesn't exhaust us. But when things are not habits, they exhaust us. If you are in the habit of treating your children this way, or you are in the habit of doing this, that is not going to exhaust you. What exhausts you is when you have to force yourself to be that. Force yourself to be in a job that you hate. Force yourself to be this way, or pretend to be this way around this person. That is exhausting. But if we create good habits, if we create the habits that we need to create, then it doesn't exhaust us. Do you find yourself saying, oh, I'm so fed up of brushing my teeth? I'm so fed up of putting on my clothes in the morning. Let me just run up naked in my car. We don't say that because They are habits. They don't exhaust us. But what do we have to do? Create good habits. So I'll pass you on to Rhea now, who will expand and some how-tos on how to develop self-esteem.
Thanks, Tony. Tony, my son, gave me some advice. He told me you need to be funny like Tony. No pressure. Okay. Self-love. How do we ensure that our kids embody self-love? It really goes back to that old adage. How do you ensure that you have happy kids? Is that me? Is to make sure that you are happy. I just want to make sure that I can figure out.
No, she will be able to use it.
Hello?
Okay, try it.
Hello? Yeah. Is to make sure that you are happy. So the best way for your child to learn self-love, truly, is how well we as parents are able to embody self-love for ourselves. And that's when our words, our thoughts, our actions are kind and nourishing. And what happens is when mentally, physically, and spiritually we are feeling well-nourished, there is no place for low self-esteem to land. So I'm going to give you a hack right now. If you feel that you are suffering from low self-esteem, if you feel your children are suffering from low self-esteem, here's a really quick, beautiful exercise that you can do for them, do with them, or do on your own. And that is create a list. The list involves, write 3 lines: mental, physical, and spiritual. And take your mind down an extraordinary remembering back to what brought you joy, what made you giggle like a schoolgirl, what allows you to feel empowered. So for me, it might be something as simple as putting cream on my dry feet, which hardly ever get any love. And in that moment when I'm doing that, there's a part of me that's watching myself going, oh, you must love you. Well, every time that I take time to, instead of running around the house like a chicken with its head cut off, and I take time to have a tea so that I feel grounded, so I feel nourished, that I'm better, faster, more able to tend to the children, that is a gift that I'm giving myself. It's a gift that I'm giving everybody in the family. So in that moment, what can I do? Maybe I can go and sit down and do the opposite of what I'm thinking to do. And that's have a cup of tea. I'm going to thank my mother and hail her out for teaching me that in my life. It starts with us practicing self-love. So find all the things that nurture your soul. Write 5 to 10 of them. Put them on the list and don't leave them in the journal. Post them up where you get up in the morning. Post it up where you make breakfast. And every day, do one thing off each one of that list. And it doesn't have to be big. Nobody has time to go to the spa. Oh yeah, that's what I can do for myself physically. Or get their toes done all the time. But it could be put some cream on your foot, or make yourself a cup of tea, or read something amazing that allows your mind to feel fueled and excited about what you can offer. You just feel sharper and smarter. Put that on, and for 1 month, I challenge you. Do one of those things on your list every day. The other day, my husband heard me speaking about this, and he goes, I really want to make a list, a self-love list. You know, when we think about self-love, there was a time where I wondered, what exactly does self-love mean, and how do we do it for ourselves? And self-love is where everything about our being, from our thoughts, our words, our actions, are aligned. And it's like a seed that's been planted. When that seed is planted, and you are nourishing it because your mind, mentally, is being fueled. When physically it's being fueled because I'm either working out or I'm doing my yoga or whatever it is. Spiritually, I'm going for walks or I'm having a cup of tea and looking out to an ocean. There is no place for insecurity to land, because as you walk through the world, you're walking through like this with your shoulders squared and feeling good. We can do that. We can help our children through our dialogues and how they can create that for themselves. But this is a value system that you commit yourself to today. But try it out for a month. I highly encourage it. It made huge differences. I've seen when I stop doing those things, how I feel about myself, and when I do. And I've always noticed that I walk braver, stronger, faster through the world with my shoulders back, when I take on that exercise. So that's a little quick hack for you. Break things down to the process. You hear words like I can't, I'll never, I'm not good at math. If your child were to say something like this, what they're looking at as is the perfection that they see from their parents, that they walk around. If they asked you to conjugate the verb être, you could do that. If they asked you to kick a ball into a goal, you could do that. We always have this vision of perfection that our children are always observing in us. They never see us struggle. They never see us in the try because we've grown up. And a lot of the things that we do mess up on, we're not actually sharing with our children. If my child were to say, but, can you make me a sunny side up egg? And they say, but I don't know how to make a sunny side up. I can't. It's too hard. What I can do is take that big item of making the sunny side up and break it down into the process. What's involved? And we sit down and we collaborate and I ask a question. So what would you do first? Oh, I'd go and get the pot out of the cupboard. Great. And then what would you put in the pot, do you think? And then they say, oh, maybe I'd put some butter or some oil or whatever it is to keep it from sticking. And then all of a sudden, you, through a narrative and through discussion, have allowed that child to break down something that seemed insurmountable. And now they go, oh, I can do that. I can do that. That's why it's really important as parents for us to use our personal stories. Because again, our children often see us in the world of perfection. Let the children recognize that who I am today there were sessions that I've done where 2 people showed up. Seriously, I prepared back in my early days and I had 2 people show up. And I thought, gosh, I could make meaning about that. I could have some story about my worth. But in that moment, that's a story I want to share with my kids. I wanted to know that I didn't always have it where I had followers or people fighting to get coaching or whatever it might be, that there was a process that was involved. And it's an ongoing ever process. That's what it is to be human. The way change happens in our lives, by the way, is usually 2 ways. One, a cataclysmic event, that kind of near-death experience that wakes us up. And the other way is at a glacial pace, where we go step by step. You guys are getting so much information today, you might feel overwhelmed. You might think, oh my gosh, okay, I've got a few gems here, which one can I use out of all of this? And understand that whatever little nugget you get to take away with you, that you get to impart and stick in your pocket and pull out for that moment when you're interacting with your son or your daughter or a coworker, then that's where the magic happens. That it's step by step, it's at baby steps. Okay, I want to tell you about somebody called Carol Dweck. Some of you might be familiar with her. She speaks a lot about fixed and growth mindset. So, when a child were to say to you, I can't do math, like I can't do this, it's too hard. The best way I can actually describe fixed and growth mindset is by an actual experiment that Carol Dweck did. She took 400 students and she put 200 of those students on one side in one room and 200 in the other room. And she said to the students, I want you to write a test. And she gave them the test, and for the first group, she said to them, and all the other researchers said, that you guys are so smart. So all she did was praise how smart and how clever and how brilliant they were and how they did and performed on their test. That was group 1, 200 students. The other group of 200, they did the same test, and instead of telling anybody that they were smart or clever or bright, what she said is, wow, you really worked hard on strategizing through that problem. Wow, I can see that you put a lot of effort into thinking that through. So, 2 completely different camps. Now she did something interesting. What she said was, I'm going to give you guys another test. So she went to the first 200, the one that had been praised and told them how brilliant they were, and wow, you're such a smart child. And she asked them, I have 2 tests. One is a little bit more effort, it's a little bit more hard, or you can do one that was equal to the one you just did. Yeah? And 33% of them chose the harder test. Yeah, only 33%. The rest of them said, I'm going to go for the easier one. Then they went to the group of 200 that were praised for the effort, the strategizing, working through the complexity, sticking with the problem. 97% of them, of those children, chose the harder test. Only 3% chose the other one. What's the takeaway from this? The takeaway is that when you praise a child based on an attribute, you're so smart, or you're so pretty, or you're so clever, or what else is there? That's such a beautiful picture that you've created. What that child is hearing is, I am valued simply because of my brilliance and my ability and my talent. And once you take that away, then they start to question, well, what good am I? What else do I have to offer? One of the things that I've struggled with in my life is I'm somebody who has balls in the air. Wow, I even have an octopus ring. I really need to turn this into a sloth, but it's an octopus ring. It reminded me that I didn't know why I had this attraction to octopuses, but it was like, oh, I always have 8 balls in the air. Yay me. Like I'm rushing towards my deathbed, you know? But I remember one day I was talking to my husband and I said to him, and I started to cry. And I was telling him how I just can't do this. I can't do this last little thing. And he said to me, and he was probably wondering why I was getting so emotional at it, because so much of my identity, of how I saw myself, of who Rhea Lalla was in the world, was 8 balls in the air. And that's how I felt I got recognized, and that's how I gave myself my own credit, because that might have been how I was recognized in the world. And then all of a sudden now I can't put 1 extra ball in the air, and I'm starting to feel bad. And I'm starting to not feel good about me, as if something's wrong with me. So, what we want to do with our children is we want to praise the effort, not the outcome. They draw a beautiful picture. Wow, that color blue is my favorite blue too. I really like how much time and you spent drawing that picture. That makes me think back to my own childhood. Wow, you spent a long time working through that problem. I can tell you put a lot of effort into it. Now they're not trying to meet up to some expectations of being clever or smart or bright. You don't have to shackle them with that. That's the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset. Fixed mindset, when you see challenge, you start to think, oh, I can't do that. I don't want to fail. So what you do is you take the easy road out. That's not what we want for our kids. We want our kids to see a challenge and go, hey, I'm going to give that a go. Yeah? And it starts by the words that we say and also what we embody as we move through the world that our children are observing within us. One really great way we can do this is by celebrating mistakes. We spend a lot of time, what'd you do well in school today? Wow, you got 98%? Awesome job. But we never get a chance to really celebrate the try, where the struggle was, where all the real effort was. When our child says, when we ask questions like, what mistake did you make that taught you something today? That's a question that we ask our children often in the house, sometime at dinner, sometime before bed, so that we can celebrate it. And everybody, daddy, mommy, and all the kids can talk about what was that thing. What did you try hard at today? Because maybe they didn't get the 98%. Maybe they got the 62 or the 52, but that's okay because they worked and they realized different, and then you can collaborate together and go, oh, I see you put a lot of effort out there, but you know what can we do? Is there something else we can do in the future? Let's brainstorm together on what we can do next time. So now the child feels pulled in and you're collaborating. We can say things like, wow, you certainly did get smarter today. Or I like the way you tried all kinds of strategies on that math problem until you got it right. Self-talk. I'm a big believer in self-talk. Self-talk is essentially the conversation you have with yourself. Yeah? There are times when I get nervous. There are times when I'm afraid. There are times when I don't think I can do something. And in those moments, how well I'm able to walk myself through a conversation in my mind about, hey, Rhea, okay, let's look at this. How are we going to eat this elephant? Okay, you're feeling nervous right now. You've been here before. You've had a situation. Let me walk through all the things that could happen and how I could handle it. We can role play with our kids. It's their first day of school. Am I going to make any friends? Am I going to know anybody? And And you can role play exactly what's going to happen and what they can say to themselves when they're starting to feel nervous or tense because they've already tasted the words and the feeling in their body and tasted the words on their lips. So this is where we can do this for ourselves and walk them through and help our children to learn how to use self-talk as a really great strategy to build their self-esteem when they're starting to feel afraid. Be versus do. This is one of my favorites. I was nervous that I'm going too far. Be versus do. What do I mean by that? If I get recognition for everything that I do in the world, Rhea, you're so helpful. Rhea, you make such a great cup of tea. Rhea, that's a lovely dinner. And all of a sudden I get caught up in the doing, and my love and my affirmation and my ability, everything that makes me me is based on what I do. For our kids, you worked really hard at school, you got 98%, and now you get to do this. It's based on what they do. Their love, the attention, the affection, the warmth, the smiles is coming a lot from their doing. You put out this output, and I'm going to give you warmth, love, nice words. When our child, when we feel that at our very core, at the very core of us, that we are lovable, that we are worthy, that we're deserving of love for no other reason, that we get to walk this planet together. That knowing, that being of feeling love, that's exquisite. That's an unshakable love. Because it doesn't matter whether, I can do the math sum. It doesn't matter whether I can paint the picture, that I'm loved for who I am at my core. How do I say that to my children? I'm so lucky that I get to wake up to your face. Not because they're funny. If I tell my kids that they're funny, you're so funny. You're so this. It's okay, we say that as parents, but all of a sudden they create that as part of their identity. So what happens the day that they're not funny? Are they unlovable at that point? Because I've gotten all the attention based on that? So, be versus do. As we interact with our children, think about how we can relay to our children that they are worthy, glorious, and exquisite just because they exist. So those are just some ideas on how to build self-esteem. Any questions so far on that? We are going to have some time for sure at the end for questions as well. Okay, so we have another section that we'd like to cover. I'm going to pass you over to Tony. It's one of the big contenders. I know everyone in this room, no matter what age, and even for ourselves, how do you parent in the digital age? Yeah, that's what Tony's going to run with right now.
Okay. Just before I finished my last section, I was talking about habits. I created a habit at home for my daughter, all my children actually, and that habit is no iPad during the week. And at first she acted like I wanted to kill her, but it's important that eventually now, when she comes home from school in the afternoon, she doesn't ask for it because it has become a habit. But sometimes when we set a standard, we could create good habits. And for children, what they need from us is love, boundaries, and consequences. Every time, if you have a two-parent household and you vary on love, boundaries, and consequences, then things go haywire. You have to be set, especially on your boundaries and consequences. I assume that love will be there. But if you set a boundary, your wife or husband set the same boundary. Because what do? Yeah. They negotiate it with you. And then you. They figure that out fairly fast. Love, boundaries, and consequences must be consistent. And what they need is consistency from us. Let's talk about gaming first. A lot of games. I like to play them sometimes too. But what happens to kids with gaming? What it causes is sleep deprivation. What is different today than it used to be? Games today, it doesn't matter, or even on the internet, there is no end. There is no end. And they stay on it, they stay on it. It creates less conversations in the household. Less and less conversations as we go on. Less connection. Therefore, what is being affected? Attachment. Less adaptability. I want to share something with you that I used to in primary school, and some of you all may be able to relate to this. There was a game that we used to play in school called Texas. We had these little cards with cowboys on it. And we had this, and what we used to do is everybody would have their cards, and what we used to do is put your card in your hand and tap it against somebody else's hand, and the cards will fall to the ground. If the one that goes over on its back loses, the one that's upright with the picture showing wins. So people used to do all kinds of things with their cards. They used to put tape on it, curve it, cheat like this so it could fall upright. But what that does, and what it did for us, is that we used to lose our cards. We used to lose our marbles. Because we used to play games that involved loss. And what that created was adaptability for us. Today, there's no adaptability. You don't lose. You just start over and you keep going. Kids today don't know how to adapt. That is what we are here for. To show them how to adapt. You know, when it comes to social media, with the sleep deprivation part, it doesn't end. But with social media, you know, social networks offer several gratifying choices. The first one is texting, email, posting allows us to project ourselves as we want it to be. We could choose the pictures where we look our best. We could change the wrinkles. We could do all kinds of things. And post it. Look how nice I'm looking on Facebook. Like if you don't have a mirror at home. You have a mirror at home, you know how it's looking, but you need people to see it. Because it's not enough for you to look good by yourself. You need to look good so that everybody could see it. That is important. You know, I'm going to wish my husband happy anniversary on Facebook because I didn't see him this morning. It is necessary. But the validation that we need is not something I want to promote as something negative. Validation, I am not saying that it is a bad thing. I am saying that it is what we need. Everybody needs to be seen. They need to be heard. They need to know that they're doing a good job. Or at least their effort is good. We will always be heard. We will always be seen. And we will constantly be validated. And with that in mind, it will give you a clear idea of what do we need to do when we communicate with people. I don't care who it is coming after you, coming at you with venom. It doesn't matter what type of emotions they might be having. They might be in a total emotional hijack. Validate. Most of my career have been in sales and customer service. And I know, as a lesson, as a rule, anytime somebody criticizes me, my company, my product, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Because what I am doing is validation. I am not saying, who the hell do you think you're talking to? What does that create? More anger, more conflict. But if you want to really mentally exist inside somebody else's head, validate. Acknowledge. It's very important that we do that. Okay, so I'll pass you on to Rhea now, and then the last time I come here, we will talk about peers. But Rhea's going to talk about some of the how-tos in dealing with this type of problem.
Sorry. The $1 million question, parenting in the digital age. Why aren't my kids focused and motivated on future goals or something more useful than spending their time on smartphones, laptops, and tablets? What they found, especially in teenage brains, I know that there are a lot of people that have teenagers in here, that the part of their brain that's responsible for planning and connected to seeing the future reward of something is very loosely tied. The neural networks in those parts of the brain, they have complicated names, is very loosely tied, and it spikes in adolescence. So us giving a lot of logic to our teenagers about whether or not they should do something, work hard now, it's going to benefit you later, do the work now, you'll see it when, one day when you have that job that you love. It spikes, and it's not as developed as it is in adults. So what do? We just forget about it? Do we just go, okay, well that's just how it is, so we're not going to like push this on our kids? I do want to just make a point that parenting in the digital age, things have changed, but there are benefits that have come from it. I have a meditation icon that's on my phone that allows me to hear great music, so when I'm feeling all frazzly, I've played it for my children. I've played at times when there's not enough stories that I can tell, where I've played online stories for the kids to listen to, where someone can read them something. Skype, hello, Skype, for those of you who have family all over the world. So there's amazing ways in which technology has benefited us. However, there's also an abuse of how much is being used. The Max Planck Institute, they did a study, and that study would show that there's that spike in adolescence where they're not thinking about the repercussions of maybe working hard and putting in the effort. They found that teenagers reacted more to immediate rewards. They were less likely to think about the future and just focused on the now. And there was a lot of impatience that was found to be peaked in early adolescence. So how do we hold on to our kids? First of all, this is where we look inwards and start first doing inventory about how we are moving through the world. I can't tell you how many times I've seen parents, and I'll include myself, there are times when I could be a slave to my phone, and every beep and every ring and every ding that happens. That I could be a slave to my Facebook to see how many likes that I'm having to get on there. Let's face it. So before I start looking outward to see what are my kids needing to do, I first have to do some inventory on how am I governing my life. Do the kids see me with my laptop on my computer all the time? And if I am, then what is it that I need to do in order to create the time such they don't have that experience of me? Could it be that we create in a family meeting where we can sit down and collaborate together on what we can do to spend more family time? This is about wooing our children, collecting our kids so they don't get taken away. There was one father who took his son. He was very addicted to a number of different gaming devices, didn't want to spend any time, just kind of moped around, didn't want to talk about emotions. He decided to take him on a camping trip. First day, didn't even talk to Dad. Dad was just there. But this is what we do. This is even when our children aren't giving love back to us, aren't talking to us, that we are still pushing love in their direction. Where do you get the strength to do that? To keep pushing love, to keep having the patience, to keep giving even though they're giving nothing back, to keep holding space for whatever they're throwing into it. Yeah, you gotta pull from your baby toe. That's where. You gotta pull deep. That's how you can bring your consciousness to how can I connect with my kids. That father recognized after the first day, the son just kind of got a bit tired, I guess, of holding on that sourpuss face and that I don't want to talk. And then it was able to start slowly, through the father, sharing stories. Share stories. Make sure that your rituals that you have in your household, maybe it's time with at dinner time, or little rituals that you've created, that's what your kids are going to remember in the long run. But the more that you can keep them oriented towards you, yeah, oriented towards what's fun and joy, and try and optimize for things like that, the less chance your children are going to want to. It's not about want, actually. It's about creating a collaboration with our children and a mutual understanding so that everyone's on the same playing field. It's true, if I give my kids a chance to be on the iPad or TV all week long, they would seize it. But could I create a family meeting, and in that family meeting, everybody gets to share a little piece of what they want and what they hope for, what's working for them and what's not? And in that family meeting, could we now each have a chance to say, hey, well, I really want to be able to be on the iPad. Okay, all right, so what can we work out? We don't want to do it during the week because we've got homework and we've got other things going. What about Friday? What about if we negotiate? No, well, you know what? I feel like I want someone Sunday morning too. And then all of a sudden, it's not like a parent telling you what to do. I think this is really important to mention. At the age of 2, do you know why no is the favorite word of a child? Everyone usually says they call them called the terrible twos. I don't like that term. But the reason why they call it the terrible twos is at 2 years old, it's the first time a child starts to separate from the parent and understand that he has his own definite autonomous being separated from the parent. So how does he assert that autonomy, or she? By saying no. You are not me. I am not you. I am separate. So all of a sudden the parent starts getting a bit freaked out because at 2, the child's not listening, and it keeps going and it keeps going, and all of a sudden the child's not listening. This has to be part of your core belief. The child, just like a duckling, wants to orient towards something. If Mama Duck's there, Duckling's going to orient towards Mama Duck. Mama Duck's not there, it's going to orient towards the goat, or the human, or the child, or whoever allows that child to feel that their needs are being met. So our goal now becomes, with the belief system that our child wants to be in rapport with us, because that is the truth. Our child wants to, even though you're thinking, no, he doesn't, no, she doesn't even want to talk to me. She does. Because the only person that has unshakable love, that ain't going nowhere, the only person that's in the best place to guide them, is you. We know that our friends, they're fickle. They love you one day, they don't like you the next day. You're in the cool club now, you're not in the cool club tomorrow. So we want to be able to keep our lines of communication open, and the way we do that is when we have the family meeting, that everyone has a say. Everyone feels like, I can put my feelings forth and it has a place to be heard. And maybe I didn't get everything as the parent that I wanted, but I negotiated. And they learn a little bit about negotiation, and they'll get a good deal in a car one day. 2, boredom is good. I think we tend to, because we want to dive in and fix all of our kids' problems, I've been there. We want to solve, well, I'm bored, what do I want to do? And then I'm trying to give them 5 things that they can do. I remember a time that my son and daughter, this was about 2 years ago, they came to me, and my husband and I were having some us time, and they said, I'm bored. And I said to them, very lovingly, because I self-regulated, and I made sure that I wasn't going, oh, I'm just sat down with your father. I didn't do that. I said, in a calm way, you know what, we're taking some me time for us. We're doing something that we're really into. I know you're going to find something fantastic to busy yourself with. Or sometimes I would have said, it's okay to be bored for a bit. They came back 5 times and they asked the question, and each time I resisted the urge to dive into fix, to offer, to give them something to distract them. And what do you know? After the 5th time, and we were very deep in having a chance to bond with each other, we noticed that our children were in the other living room, busy building a time machine, full of pieces of laptop that they had stripped apart and put as part of the time machine buttons. In that moment, their creativity came alive. It was an old laptop. Nobody was using the laptop. But in that moment, their creativity came alive. We have to be okay with allowing our children to hear the call of boredom, if they just sit with their boredom long enough to realize that this is not who they are, this is not their condition, it's fleeting. Emotions, they come and they go. My anger, it doesn't stay forever. It comes and it goes. And so, same with their boredom. So allow the boredom to fill up themselves up. Allow them to sit with their boredom until something organically gets called to them and they find their passion. Reflect on why is it that we have such an uncomfortability with allowing our children to be bored. What you find when a child is now left to their own devices, that's magic making that's happening. You can't put a price on that. You can't take them to a class that'll teach that, of how they organically create from nothing. That's magic. Woo your children, I've spoken about this before, but we are in an exquisite dance with our children. And the way we keep the dance going is they're looking for us to lead. Don't expect our children to lead. This doesn't mean that we give our children everything we want. I can't say that enough. We can tell our children no as we listen to their pain. We can say yes to the feeling, but no to the request. And as we say it, we don't say it with a twisted face. We say it holding their hand, letting them know, I know this is disappointing for you. I know you're disappointed you can't go to the party. You know what? I remember back when I was 15, I really wanted to go to this party and my mother didn't let me go and I felt really angry at her. I was so upset. But you know what? I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's going to be safe. And we're not going to go. I'd like you to stay home. And in that moment, that child, even if they're disappointed, and even if though they have a pout, how do they feel received by that? They feel like, oh, mom gets me. She understands my pain because I've used my empathy. That even though I created the boundary because I am the captain of the ship, and by the way, I just want to make no two ways about it. You as the parent, you are the captain of the ship. You are looking to be. If you are forgetting that you are the captain of the ship, then you have to remember, what would the captain of the ship be doing in this moment? Would he be seeing like rocks and start going, oh my gosh, there's rocks? No. Think of how the captain of the ship commands the captain of the ship. It's with a deep knowing, a deep intuition, a deep resolve of I am leading this and I can guide you, but I can do it with love and connection and partnership, and we're going to evolve together. We are constantly wooing our children. We can do this by creating rituals. I cannot remember a single thing that I did when I was 12 years old, really, but I can remember that on the 30th of October, every year, my parents took us to go and choose a pumpkin from the pumpkin patch or from some nearby place, and we carved pumpkins for Halloween. Yeah? The more rituals, the more things you can ritualize in your life with your children, whatever it is, even making tea, going for pumpkins, Christmas, whatever little traditions you have, the more you can do that, how you get up, what you say to them when you get up, what you say to them when you put them to bed, that is what forges the bond and keeps them close to you, and then you have their ear, and then you have your listening. If your children are not listening to you, build the relationship. There's no magic formula. How do you build a relationship? You build a relationship by the words, the tone, the actions, the empathy, the connection, the sharing. Again, is that work? Yeah, it's beautiful work. Family meetings, I'm a really big believer in family meetings, creating family meetings so that you can share, discuss, collaborate. Doesn't matter how old your children are, they have a say. They want to feel that they have a say in this world, that they have something to offer. Allow that for them. Okay, peers. Tony, I'm gonna let you, this is our final bit for the day, and then I'd love to take some questions from you all. So Tony, take it away.
Okay, now I mentioned something earlier, and Rhea made a good point just the slide before about how we develop that relationship. Fix the relationship, everything follows after that. But peers are one of those attachment relationships that we compete with as parents. It is a competing relationship. You know, it is not the only competing relationship. We can have competing relationships in divorce that causes a loss of attachment. For many children who come, we have tons of proof on this. Every time there is loss of attachment, something happens to children. And peers are one of those things that are with us, with our children from 3 months old sometimes, especially for working parents. So I want to just make some points on competing attachments. Attachments are incompatible when a child cannot preserve closeness or a sense of connection in two relationships simultaneously. Incompatibility is created when a child gets one set of rules, of cues, of how to act and how to be from parents, and a completely set of rules or cues, from peers. Which one are they going to listen to? And that depends on your attachment. You know, Dr. Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate wrote a book called Hold On to Your Kids. It's a book that Rhea actually introduced me to, and it is a fantastic book. I mean, a lot of the information that we talked about today are from that book and many others that we have come across. One of the participants in here told me that they started reading Emotional Intelligence. That is not an easy book to read. It is a very difficult book to read. In fact, I put it down the first time I picked it up, because the first 3 chapters just talk about the brain and the thalamus and the neocortex. I said, what is that? But I put it down, and then years later I picked it up, and I started reading those chapters again. The great thing about that book is that you could actually start anywhere you want, because every chapter talks about a different aspect of emotional intelligence. The more incompatible the working on attachments, the more likely attachments will polarize. The most damaging of competing attachments are peers. Humans and other creatures automatically orient themselves by seeking cues from those whom they are attached. The weaker the parental relationship becomes, the more prone we are to being replaced by peers. And these are just points I'm just going to read off this slide, because I want to get into something that is even more disturbing. The more we focus, the more we use force, the more wear and tear the relationship becomes. So everything that we have talked about is about developing the attachments with your children. Everything that we have talked about, apart from regulating our own emotion in times where there might be an emotional hijack. Now, young people, therefore, turn to peers for instruction, modeling, and guidance. But are peers capable of doing that? Are they capable at any age of doing that? You know, we want to be needed. It is natural for us to want to belong, to be loyal to somebody. And attachments with peers, especially, we tend to, because teens tend to follow peers a lot. We get into that socialization period where we are starting, apart from the imprint period that we talked about earlier, from 0 to 7, we now enter a socialization period where we want to copy everything that peers do. What peers do it. That is important. Sometimes we are not authentic. We pretend to be somebody else just so we can be accepted by a group. Many of us do that. It's peer pressure. We conform to a group just because you want to belong to that group. And that is sometimes very dangerous. You know, the other day I saw a very disturbing thing on I meant to talk to Rhea about this before, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it. I saw this fella kick up his girlfriend on video camera. They had it all over the news. Remember? You all remember that? You know what crossed my mind? Well, before it crossed my mind, I heard afterwards the girl started carrying food and clothes for him in the jail every day, after he just kicked her on video. What crossed my mind was, I wonder what type of attachment relationships she had to put up with that. We lose our authenticity just to secure an attachment need that we have sometimes. That's why sometimes we get into abusive relationships. That is why sometimes we put up with things that we don't need to put up with. And it comes back to a self-esteem issue. We have to develop self-esteem. That is not something that automatically happens. We have to develop that. So the more peers matter, the more children are devastated, right? Peer rejection and failing to fit in. And because we are with peers at a younger age today, there is a higher degree of suicide rates everywhere. Everywhere. You see it, not only here, all over the US. People, especially with social media, people have committed suicide just from being bullied on social media. But this happens because what is missing in peer relationships are unconditional love and acceptance. Peers will not sacrifice things for the growth and development of another. Parents do that. That is why we need to secure our attachment needs that we have. But within those peers, you sometimes have something called the bully. And bullying could exist anywhere from 2 years old to 70 years old. It occurs all through the animal kingdom. And the bully, what do? There's a quest for superiority through exploiting vulnerability. It happens in schools, it happens in marriages, and it happens in companies. There are bosses who are bullies. There are husbands who are bullies, wives who are bullies too. Like I said, all animals have it. But what creates that? There are a lot of theories on this. Many theories that how bullies are created. I disagree with some of the theories that experts say, but I tend to listen to other experts. And that is that we have an alpha instinct, a natural instinct, to assert dominance, to assume responsibility, to care for, to take care of. We have that naturally in all of us. If you have a 2-year-old, assuming you have more than one child, and you take a baby or his younger brother or sister and put that baby on his or her lap, what do they do? What do they do? They want to care for him. They don't say, hey, get off my lap. They want to care for the person who is younger than them. It is natural for us to do that. But then we have a dependency instinct to seek, to be dependent on somebody. And this is common in all relationships. We go back and forth. Sometimes I'm dominant, sometimes I'm dependent. And we go back and forth all the time. And this comes from your limbic region because it's instinct and emotion. So the alpha instinct and the plus the dependence instinct is a relationship. How do we approach a bully? How do we change that? Like I was telling you about working with the police service, there are a lot of kids who they took from hotspot areas in schools, and when they transferred them to the youth clubs, a lot of times behaviors changed because now they have people around them who care. Do you think they get that at home? Why do people join gangs? Because they want a place to belong, a place that feels like a family. There are some homes so bad that they don't feel like they have anybody who listens to them there. What kind of validation are they getting at home? It could be as rough as you could imagine. But with bullies, when the bully's heart is softened, true personality comes back. And many times. And one of the principals told me sometimes kids would come into her office and she would hug them. That is an important point. That is important. It is one way of not reacting. Because what do bullies want? Dominance. They want to dominate people. But they have never had their heart softened by any incident or any person. So we can address the alpha complex at its roots, and that is form the right relationships with them. Okay, so I'll put you back onto Rhea now. This is my last section, but I just want to say a special thank you all for coming. I will talk at the end. You know, my wife is here, my daughter is here, my mom is here, and you know, the support that they have given me in putting all of this together, given me the time. I appreciate it. And my mom for a long time has developed these attachment relationships with all her children. All right, Rhea?
Beautiful. How to connect with your kids and peers. Deep attuned listening. You may not like the peers that your children have chosen to hang out with. That gets us nervous and anxious inside. If we come at our kids and we ever feel like we're trying to do a lawyer's case, or we just have the energy of one of panic, our children are like Spider-Man. They have spider sense. They can tell that you have an agenda. They can smell it in the air. It's in the water. So if you have a deep anxiety about who your children have chosen or who they're going to choose as a friend, that they may influence them or lead them astray, the goal there is to how well you can use what the Aborigines in Australia called the didiri, deep, attuned, sacred, reverential listening. Gosh, just hear how that sounds. That's a whole different... How many of us even listen like that daily? Reverential, sacred listening. We allow for whatever's coming up, whatever's getting filled up, and whatever need that is, to have space for it. We're not moving to move them from that space, to change it, to fix it. All of us are dying to be listened to like that. For the Aborigines, for people that may have had trauma, have had heartache, have had pain, the Aborigines allow for them to talk about it again and again and again until finally every pain, every last bit of whatever it was that is not getting met, which is getting met someplace else, has a chance to be heard. And in that place, it gets healed. See, Aborigines don't seem to suffer from all these maladies that we seem to have in the West. Deep, attuned listening. Listening is about connection. Regulate your emotions. You cannot listen when you're feeling like you're agenda-driven. You cannot listen when you're trying to smuggle in, because you think you're being clever, some little thing in there for them to try and figure out. Come on. We know. It doesn't work. They're too smart for that. They got you since you were 2. They figured you out. So instead, regulate your emotion. Find the calm, peaceful place in you so that when you do listen, your listening is like this. Tell me more. Unattached. You know, is it challenging to be unattached listening, to do that deep reverential? Yes. But can you do it? Yes. You can bring your consciousness to it. You can go to your breath. You can find the place in your body. You can work it through till it's a one, and you can listen. And in that place, you can ask questions like this. Do I feel better? Do you feel better after spending time with this person? Do you feel free to be yourself around this person? Do you feel safe? Or do you feel like you need to watch what you say or do? Is the person supportive of you? Does he or she treat you with respect? Is this person you feel someone you can trust? These aren't questions when you're agenda-driven that you ask. These are questions you ask when you lay back on a hammock or cuddled up in a bed, when you're curious about who they've chosen as their friends. Tell me more. If our children are hanging out with kids that we don't know, we need to bring them back. How do we bring them back? It's a fallacy to believe that once our kids become teenagers, that they want to leave us and be with them. That is a fallacy that's been propagated, and we've accepted it as a truth. Our children always want to be in rapport with us, but if they feel that they can't be in rapport with us, and they're more in rapport with their friend, then that's where they're going to orient themselves to them. Invite their friends over. Be a part of it. Don't leave the room. Be a part of the space. Connect with them. Have a joke with them. Have a laugh with them. If you can, invite the parents over. Talk to the parents. Create a relationship with them. Find out so that you guys, we can go back to a bit more of the village that we came from. Also, visualization. When I see my kids as small, and the way it comes is very peculiar. If I go into a panic, oh gosh, they're not working on this. What are they going to do for a living? Are they going to have a job that makes them money? Are they going to be successful? If I worry and focus my energy on that, then it's a really funny thing about how things tend to manifest into reality. But if I stand in a deep place of knowing that no matter what they're doing, that I see them as big and capable and effective in life, that as they move through the world, they will figure this problem out and they will make good decisions. The way I simply relate to my children begins to change. Yeah? But how would I do with all this fear? What do I do with all this panic? Aren't I supposed to panic and then talk to them and worry and make sure they don't make the mistake I made? I didn't do that. I don't want you to have to go down that path. But that's not the way to win their listening. The way to win their listening is to listen and to share and to be authentic and then to visualize them as making good decisions. One of the things I want my children to get from me, gain from our relationship, is that they make good decisions in life. That I believe that they make good decisions. So every time I see them doing something where I feel that they've made a decision, I blow in those embers. Wow, I trust that you can make a good decision. I trust your ability to make good decisions. So it's a constant affirmation that the child learns to trust themselves and they believe that mommy and daddy get me. They see me as big and capable in life. Okay, just want to share with you some of my favorite questions in the world. It's one of my last slides. And these are questions I believe hold deep magic. Every person you meet is aching to hear this question. How can I love you in the way you need to be loved? My mother asked me that question not too long ago. And I was so happy she asked me that question, because it gave me an opportunity to share with her how I, Rhea Lalla, likes to be loved. It's different, maybe, than how some of us have maybe been exposed to the 5 love languages. You know, some people like acts of service, some people like words of affirmation, some people like physical touch. What do you do when you marry somebody that might have a different love language than yours? All of a sudden, your love's not landing, their love's not landing. You guys, you tend to give love the way you like love. But when you ask a question like that, it's so beautiful. Because then nobody asks, and then you get a chance to say, oh, I love this, and I love that. This is how you can love me, so I feel the love. Is there anything I can work on? I ask my children this question every day, every night before I go to bed. You know, what can I do to love you in the way you need to be loved? And how did you feel loved by mommy today? Why? Because believe me, my kids are so self-expressed, they will keep going and telling me all the little things. Well, you didn't notice this, and you didn't do that, and that's okay. And then I take it in, and I acknowledge it, and I validate it. And then, when I leave them, I want to go away with my shoulders squared. And the way I do that is I ask them, how did you feel loved by mommy today? And sometimes I could spend the whole day at Disney World, but what they remembered is that when we were getting in the car, I put my hands on their shoulder as I put them in. It's sometimes often not the thing I think that they're going to remember. And this allows me to feel like, oh, be on the hunt for where the world is trying to love you. And so, I want to end by this quote. It's actually something, I'm quoting myself here. The height of vanity. Okay, and that is, your child's development hangs in the balance of your own transformation. If we want our children to thrive, the work is here. If something's not happening in the relationship, and I want it to change, the work is here. I might have to do some work, though. I might have to go into whatever mommy daddy issues I have, find the little 12-year-old, 5-year-old girl in me, look her in the eye, hold her hand, find out what she needs, and reparent her. Give her what she needs, so that I don't repeat the patterns that might have come from my own experience or socialization or childhood. I want to thank you. I want to salute every one of you that took the time to come out here today. We're definitely going to take some time. This is where the magic happens. If you guys, because we have the time to answer any questions that you have, you get to listen in on how we bring all of this together. Sky, I see your hands up. Yes, we'll get to you. Just one little thing, that in our books, there is a page. It's a testimonial page for anyone who does have to leave. But it's a testimonial page that I'd love for you guys to take a moment to fill out, so that we can just find out your feelings on the session and what you got out of it. And you can leave that at the front desk when eventually you leave. This is after our questioning time. I also want to take a moment to thank all of you for coming, but do a special shout out to some people in the room. I'm going to start with my kids, who give me more opportunity to learn and grow and develop than anything else in my entire life. Thank you, Luke and Sky. To a husband who supports what I do and is neck on neck with me on everything that needs to be done in the household, so that I can go and pursue and do things like this. So Paul in the back, shout out to you. And I want to shout out to my parents, who from a very, very young age, the two of them, Vidya and John, for always asking me about the inner workings of my mind and what was hurting my heart and how they could love me, and trying to figure out every last aspect of what would allow me to thrive so I don't get shackled down by hurts or pains, and always being open to growing themselves. So I salute you guys for creating that in my life, and I thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I would love to take any questions that you have on parenting. Bring your toughest ones. Let's do some real-time coaching. Anybody? Yes, hi. To you.
You spoke about the cost of NHS. We put in not always we look. It reminded me of just Sunday when I went to Queen's Hall and my daughter was next to me. She was actually decided to go.
Yes, please.
Sorry, the cost of energetically pulling love away with the look. I was saying that I went to Queen's Hall on Sunday and my daughter, she was, getting a little restless. I did give her a look. And, she did I saw her shoot, like shrink, a little bit. And it's something that I'm sure all of us could attest to that, getting a look from my parents, And I was just wondering, in that situation, what else could I have done to show her, okay, tag along a little bit, the performance is going on, this is not the time to be doing that. What could I have done instead of give her that look?
It's a great question. The first thing I would say is when the more we can prepare our children for what's to be expected, the more we can set everyone up for success. So if you're going to Queen's Hall, for example, and you're going to be sitting down, you know that there needs to be quiet and a certain decorum that needs to be observed, I would have the conversation on the car right there. Maybe multiple times. Hey, do you remember going to Queen's Hall? What do we need to do to make sure, we don't want to spoon feed them how to think, what do we need to do to make sure that we're set up for success today? Yeah? And think through, preempt all the different experiences that might happen. You might get squirmy, you might get bored, you might get tired, you want to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, and then you can talk through and she feels that you're not talking to her, but she feels like, oh, okay, this is what I could do. Or this is what's expected of me when I get there. However, let's suppose that didn't happen and you're actually at the session. In that moment, if you have the, was she sitting next to you? Okay, in that moment, then I would softly whisper in her ear, first an acknowledgement of whatever it is you think might be uncomfortable. Like, well, what do you think the actual issue was? Okay, boring. So let's speak to what it actually is. She's feeling the performance is boring. So if she hears in my ear, I need you to sit up straight and listen to it, she's not feeling like what her real pain is right now is being heard. So it's boring, let's call a spade a spade. So I would say, I know this section is kind of boring. You know what, I'm kind of bored too. But these people have worked really hard and they practice for hours and hours to do their best and put it on the stage. Is there something we can do right now? Now, whatever short form you can do to that, because I know that's a whole essay, but whatever you can do to sort of create that, at least has her feel like you understand and understand that this is uncomfortable for her. But I'm a big believer in setting kids up for success. So if you know you're going out for groceries and going to do 5 different errands, prepare it. Prepare. Sometimes, by the way, as parents, we tend to add in one extra thing and our kids are hungry and tired and they're dying beside us and it's like, no, drop it. Let's just go home and forget it. Hi.
One of the things that works, my mother always gave the look, but my mother would give a smile. So you get a firm look with a smile. So I knew, because she didn't hit, she didn't scream, she didn't shout, she was a gem. So I find with my own children, giving a smile helps. And one of the reasons for that, I remember my first son, he was just about 2. And he was interfering with something, and I would just give him this look. And he would come to me, and then would act a particular way. And I said, what is that? That's how your face looks. And he thought it was a big joke. So then we had a conversation that if I look at you, and I think you're doing something wrong, I'm going to just look a little firm, and then I'll smile to let you know that I love you, and I want you to think about what you're doing.
So you collaborated on a plan together. High five me. Love it. Hi. Okay.
Hi. I have a 12-year-old, and growing up we had a trusting relationship where she would come and discuss with me. So here it is, she got into secondary school, I'm in Form 1, she now gone in, and she is in the midst of peers, and the conversations and the discussions and the relationships that she had with me, you're seeing that it's changing. So here it is, you're thinking that the trust is there, right? And she was able to come to you and talk to you about certain things, but now it's no longer there. So she did things that, okay, that violated the trust. And I'm telling her, okay, I trusted you and you violated my trust. So now you have to earn my trust now. But constantly you should be doing things, but you don't know when that trust is building or when she's trying to gain back that trust. So, but in your mind, what she did is still there. So I see myself, every time she do something, you're treating her with the same way that the incident happened. So then I don't know when she's building or even when she's trying to gain that trust. How do you deal with that?
So that's a great question, and we had the opportunity to speak a little bit on break about this. And one of the insights that I just want to share, if you'll allow me, is that there were some things in your own life that you noticed that got sparked during the session about how your mom might have related to you and interacted with you, correct? Why is this important? This is important because as we interact with our children, so much of our past, you know, if we did something or didn't do something, or we made a mistake, and we're desperate for our children not to create the same mistake, not to do the same things that we did, so we're in a desperation to do like a lawyer's case, to prove to them, to give them a lot of left-brain stuff, whys and whys and whys. And the thing is that our kids can feel that. They can feel your clenched, contracted energy around whatever it is. Yeah? So the question that you had for me is, something happened that had you not trust your daughter. Yeah? And so what I would now want to do, because it's already happened, so now I want to reflect, introspect, and go, what can I do now that allows me to heal that and open up the conversation and the dialogue so that my child didn't feel fear? Because there would have been some sort of fear, probably coming from our own 12, 15-year-old self that had the same thing occur with us and with you and your mom, and now it's a repeated cycle, correct? So if that's happening, then I would have an open dialogue. She's 12. I would be sharing a story about what's happened when I was young. And if she doesn't want to talk, because she does, you know, maybe right now she feels mommy doesn't understand, she's not going to, if I were to ask her that question, she's not going to see my point of view. I now have to create empathy, which we know empathy is about finding the place in our life that's just like her. Yeah? Not telling her what to do, but sharing the stories of how things were when you were young. Not every story is one that you want to share with her, but pick the ones that allow her to just hear where you were struggling, where you didn't want to tell your mom, where you didn't think that she would understand, where you were fearful of her because I don't know if she's going to listen or she's going to ridicule or she's going to judge me. And hey, I'm determined to be the best mom I can be. I'm learning all the time. I want you to help teach me. Can you teach me? If there's a time that you want to share something, maybe you're worried about, I'm going to say no, or I'm going to be mad. But I want you to know, what's bigger than that is my love and my connection with you. So creating that relationship requires you to emotionally soothe yourself so that you're not so tightly clenched. Because she's reading that clenchedness from you and going, you're not going to get, before you even utter a sound, she thinks you're not going to feel her pain and you're going to just say no. So you have to win her back. You basically have to woo her back. And you can use the words, I know you can. You can find the words to heal whatever has been done in the past, wherever she felt mom doesn't get me. And then you can say an affirmation of who you are and what you're committed to. And then you can collaborate together on what can we do now, going in the future, when something comes up and you feel like you want to do this, but this is not something that, you know, you're at a crossroads. What can we do when you're at that junction to figure out which route to take? And now she feels like, okay. And then when she does decide to do that, and she comes to you, and you're thinking, holy crap, what she just told me terrifies the heck out of me, yeah? Then that's where you're going to have to use your intuition and your best judgment. That's where you're going to have to create your boundaries because you're captain of the ship. Maybe you have to say yes to the feeling but no to the request, but hold her hand with love and connection through the whole thing. But it has to be because your energy around it. Right now, so that's where it starts. Yeah? And I think you can do that. Step by step. Opening up the pathway of conversation. Does that help? Yeah. Hello, sir.
I have a 3-year-old son, and recently he's started having really bad temper tantrums. You know, half an hour of crying and screaming, and wriggling on the floor. All of the activities that you'd expect to see at 2, are occurring at 3. So just want some advice on how you would handle those tantrums.
Yeah, tantrums are like one of my favorites because when a child is in a tantrum, they are completely hijacked, right? We talked about that. Their whole brain is taken over by whatever they want and whatever they're not getting. So it's counterintuitive. The natural tendency is to go, like, can you give me the example? Can you think of something specifically that recently happened that caused a tantrum in your son?
It could be anything. His Ninja Turtle doesn't stand up right, and he can't get it done.
Yeah.
He wants to take his friends home,
Right.
and at the end of the day.
Okay, good. So, okay, let's use one. So he's building blocks. The blocks fall over because he was building a castle,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So when the child is upset, his castle just fell over. In that moment, I could go, well, we could build another one. Logic. Don't worry. We can fix it. Logic. Don't be sad. Let's move away from feeling. All of which the child goes, I don't want to hear that. I'm hijacked. So we want to move with our right brain. Everything about our energy, so this is our nonverbal cues, our tone, our eye contact, or everything. We drop down to their eye level and we go, oh, I can see that you're really angry that your castle fell. You know what? I'd be really angry too if my castle fell. See, now I'm starting to relate. Now here's the thing. You might say that he's so beside himself with anger, he can't hear it. So you have to give the anger a chance to be released. Yeah? But what I'm doing in that moment is I keep using the words. I'm using a narrative to go through. You're feeling angry right now. It's okay to feel angry. You know what? I remember one time I don't know, what were you doing the last time you felt angry? And all of a sudden you're sharing a story, and all of a sudden in there, huh? And they start listening to what Daddy said about his anger and how he solved it. Now, at the end of the temper tantrum, if he's breaking things or pushing things down, in that moment, and again, remember timeouts are for parents, time-ins are for kids. At this moment is not the time to try and move the child away, or go and sit in the corner. Just so you know, for people that use timeouts as a discipline strategy, if you take monkeys, for example, which are like highly social creatures, and you take a monkey and separate it from the group, it will go insane. That monkey will go insane. It is like the equivalent of taking your child and saying, I'm going to put you in the dark, in the forest, by yourself, and you're going to see a whole bunch of howling monkeys and owls and all kinds of crazy sounds, but you stay there. That's what you're doing. So don't put them in a timeout. You can sit down beside so they're not tearing down the walls if he's at that point, right? You can hold his hand. Get yourself together, which is through your breath and your regulation and soothing, and then you can create your boundary and say yes to the feeling, no to the request. No, we can't break that, but I can imagine you're really angry right now, or you're really angry at Daddy right now, and I'm not going to leave you, and I'm going to be here. And eventually you're going to see the sine wave of that anger start to lessen. And in that place, it probably still isn't the teachable moment, because he's now just starting to get himself together. The teachable moment is going to come later on, when two of you are happy and he's forgotten about the blocks, and you're sitting down on the side with him and you go, hey, you know what? I remember earlier on, you got really angry when your blocks fell. This is how we integrate. Remember we're talking about integrating the left and the right side? Hey, when you get angry like that, what can we do next time? Because sometimes I'm working on something and then I lose it on the computer, or you're building something and it just all falls down. What can you do in that moment next time?